Story 1. This story is titled, Because of My Parents, I Celebrated Christmas Alone while they celebrated in Italy, and now they want financial assistance for my brother's wedding, and I cut them off. Hi everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so I know this sounds bad, but hear me out. My family has always been complicated. Growing up, my parents weren't exactly what you'd call nurturing. They were the kind of people who thought doing the bare minimum for their kids meant we owed them for life. My dad, Mark, loved to act like some self-made genius who could do no wrong, always reminding me how I was lucky to have him as a dad. Meanwhile, my mom, Linda, had this habit of constantly reminding me how much she sacrificed for me, usually right before guilting me into doing something. It wasn't like they were physically abusive or anything, but the mental load of being around them was suffocating. Everything was about them. If they helped me with something, they'd hold it over my head for years. If I succeeded at something, it was because they pushed me. If I failed, it was because I didn't listen to them. It didn't matter how much I tried. I was never enough compared to my younger brother, Ryan. Ryan, the golden boy, could do no wrong in their eyes. He was 4 years younger than me and had always been spoiled rotten. I'm not exaggerating when I say he got away with everything. While I was expected to get a job at 16, help around the house, and keep my grades up, Ryan was allowed to float through life. They'd make excuses for him constantly. He's still figuring things out, or he's just a kid. Never mind that he was 22 now and still living at home, barely working, and spending all his time gaming or hanging out with his girlfriend, Kylie. By the time I was 25, I thought I'd escaped all that. I got married, moved to a different part of town, and tried to build a life of my own. For a while, it was great. My ex and I didn't have kids, which made things a little easier, but when the marriage fell apart, everything I'd built crumbled. The divorce wasn't messy, but splitting assets left me broke. I couldn't afford rent on my own, and with no close friends or family willing to take me in, I had to do the one thing I swore I'd never do, move back in with my parents. It was supposed to be temporary. I told myself, just save up for a few months and you'll be out. But temporary turned into a year. Living with them again was like being sucked into a time machine and dropped right back into my teenage years. Every day was a reminder of why I'd left. My dad's lectures about how I needed to get my act together became a daily occurrence. Never mind that I was already working a part-time job and picking up freelance gigs on the side to save up. He'd say things like, when I was your age, I already had a house, conveniently forgetting that housing prices weren't the same in the 80s. My mom wasn't any better. She had this knack for turning every conversation into a passive-aggressive dig at me. If I didn't do something exactly how she wanted, she'd say, well, I guess we raised Ryan right at least. She never missed an opportunity to compare me to Ryan, who of course was thriving under their roof without lifting a finger. Ryan didn't care about any of this. If he noticed the tension in the house, he didn't let it bother him. Most of the time, he was in his room with his gaming setup, blasting music, or scrolling through his phone. When he did interact with me, it was usually to make some snide comment about how I needed to lighten up or get my life together. The breaking point came 2 weeks before Christmas. I came home from my part-time job, exhausted and ready to collapse on the couch, only to find the living room filled with suitcases. My parents and Ryan were buzzing around, packing clothes and toiletries. I asked, what's going on? My dad barely looked up from what he was doing and said, oh, we're leaving for Italy tomorrow. I froze. Italy? Since when? My mom looked at me like I'd just asked the dumbest question in the world. Since we planned it weeks ago, she said. We wanted to spend Christmas somewhere special this year. Ryan's been so excited about it. Okay, I said slowly, still trying to process. So, you're all going? Of course, my dad said. It's a family trip. Family trip. That hit me like a ton of bricks. So, I'm not invited? My mom shrugged. We didn't think you'd want to come. And honestly, with how things have been, we didn't think you'd be able to afford it. Ryan, who'd been sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone, finally chimed in. Yeah, and it's not like you've been easy to be around lately. He smirked like he was enjoying the whole thing. It took everything in me not to lose it right there. You could have at least told me, I said. My dad sighed like he was already tired of the conversation. Look, it's not a big deal. Maybe if you got your act together, we'd have considered paying for your ticket. But you didn't, so next year, maybe. Next year. As if I'd want to spend another year in their house. As if I'd want to go anywhere with them after this. The next morning, they left without so much as a goodbye. I sat in the empty house, staring at the wall, trying to wrap my head around everything. It wasn't just about the trip, it was everything. A lifetime of being second to Ryan, of being treated like an outsider in my own family. I'd told myself for years that I just needed to try harder, that maybe if I did everything right, they'd finally see me as an equal. But this was the moment I realized it would never happen. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. It was just one Christmas, right? But as the day went on, it started to sink in how much it really did matter. I mean, this was supposed to be family time. Even if things were tense or awkward between us, I thought we'd at least pretend to care about spending the holiday together. Instead, they flew across the world to eat pasta and take selfies while I ate a greasy burger on the couch. The day started off weird. I woke up and didn't even realize it was Christmas for a second. No smell of breakfast cooking, no sound of holiday music, nothing. The house was dead silent. I wandered into the kitchen, looked at the empty coffee pot, and thought, is this it? I ended up making myself a bowl of cereal and sitting at the dining table, staring at the spot where our Christmas tree should have been. They didn't even bother putting one up this year because, apparently, Italy was all the holiday spirit they needed. I spent most of the morning scrolling through my phone, hoping to distract myself. But of course, that only made things worse. Every single social media post seemed to be about Christmas. Friends opening presents with their kids, co-workers posting pictures of their decorated living rooms, even random acquaintances sharing videos of their dogs and Santa hats. And then there was my family. They didn't waste any time flooding their accounts with photos from Italy. The first picture I saw was of Ryan, standing in front of the Colosseum, wearing a cheesy Santa hat. The caption, "Christmas in Rome, best Christmas ever." Next up was a shot of my parents at some fancy outdoor cafe, holding glasses of sparkling water and grinning like they didn't have a care in the world. My mom's caption read, "Making memories with my favorite people, heart eyes." Favorite people. Yeah, message received loud and clear. By lunchtime, I couldn't take it anymore. I put my phone down and decided to do something, anything to make the day feel less pathetic. I drove to the only place open, a fast food drive-thru. I sat in the parking lot, eating my burger and fries, watching other people with their families through their car windows. There was one moment where I saw a little kid in the back seat of a minivan, holding up a new toy for his parents to see, and I don't know. It hit me hard. I wasn't even jealous of the toy or the family or anything. It was more like this realization that no one in my own family had even bothered to ask how I was spending my Christmas. When I got back to the house, I tried to cheer myself up. I turned on a Christmas movie, Home Alone, because irony, and tried to get into the holiday spirit. But it felt forced, like I was just going through the motions. Every now and then, I'd glance at my phone, and there'd be another notification about a new post from my parents or Ryan. I should have just turned the notifications off, but part of me couldn't look away. It was like watching a train wreck. The pictures kept coming. My dad posing in front of some famous fountain, Ryan holding a plate of food the size of his head, my mom gushing about the breathtaking views from their villa, and the captions. Don't even get me started. Everything was unforgettable and the perfect Christmas. It felt like they were rubbing it in, even if that wasn't their intention. Or maybe it was. Who knows? By the evening, I'd officially hit rock bottom. I ended up eating leftovers from the fridge, some bland casserole my mom had made earlier that week, and sitting at the kitchen table alone. I started thinking about all the times I'd bent over backward for my family, the birthdays I'd spent helping my mom decorate, the weekends I'd given up to help my dad fix stuff around the house, the countless times I'd covered for Ryan when he screwed up. And this was how they repaid me? Leaving me behind without so much as a second thought? It wasn't just hurtful. It was humiliating. That night, I finally broke down and called one of my old friends, Mike. I hadn't talked to him much since moving back in with my parents, mostly because I didn't want to explain why I was back in Cleveland. But I needed to talk to someone, and Mike was the kind of guy who didn't ask too many questions. When he picked up, I tried to play it cool, but he could tell something was up. "Hey man," he said. "Merry Christmas. How's it going?" I hesitated. Yeah, same to you. It's fine. Just a quiet day?" "Quiet? What about your folks?" I could have lied, but I was too tired to keep up the charade. "They're in Italy," I said flatly. "They left last week." There was a long pause. "Wait, what? You didn't go with them?" "Nope. They didn't invite me." Mike let out a low whistle. "Damn, dude. That's cold." "Yeah," I said, laughing bitterly. "Tell me about it." We ended up talking for a while, mostly about random stuff. Old memories, dumb jokes, anything to take my mind off the train wreck of my Christmas. By the time we hung up, I felt a little better, but the pit in my stomach was still there. Something about that Christmas made it hit harder. Maybe it was because I was older now and starting to realize just how messed up the dynamic was. Or maybe it was because I'd finally run out of excuses for their behavior. Whatever it was, I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, letting them treat me like an afterthought while I bent over backward to please them. That Christmas was a wake-up call, even if I didn't fully understand it at the time. It forced me to start thinking about what I wanted for my life and what I wasn't willing to put up with anymore. But at that moment, all I could do was try to make it through the night. After the Italy fiasco, I thought things would quiet down. I mean, how much more could my parents and Ryan push? I was wrong. So wrong. A couple of days after they got back, I was sitting in the living room, trying to avoid them as much as possible. I had no interest in hearing about the best Christmas ever, for the millionth time. But of course, my dad decided to call a family meeting. It wasn't really a meeting. It was just them deciding they needed something from me, which was basically how every family meeting went. Dad started with his usual serious tone, leaning forward like he was about to drop some life-changing wisdom. "We've got something important to discuss," he said, as if he hadn't just spent thousands of dollars on a luxury trip. "It's about your brother." My stomach sank. Whenever the conversation started with Ryan, I knew it was going to end with me being roped into something I didn't want to do. "Ryan proposed to Kylie while we were in Italy," Mom added, with this proud little smile, like he'd just won a Nobel Prize or something. "It was beautiful. They're so happy." I barely managed to nod. Congrats, I guess." Ryan, of course, was sitting there smirking like he'd just conquered the world. "Yeah, we're planning a spring wedding. It's gonna be amazing." I was already getting irritated. They hadn't even told me about Kylie being part of the trip or the engagement, and now they were acting like it was the highlight of the year. But I kept my mouth shut because I knew where this was going. Then Dad leaned back, folded his arms, and hit me with it. "We're going to need your help with the wedding expenses." I blinked, sure I'd misheard. "Wait, what?" Mom jumped in, all sweet and condescending. "It's not just you, honey. We're all pitching in. But weddings are expensive, and Ryan and Kylie are young. They don't have the resources yet." Ryan nodded, like that was supposed to make it all make sense. "Yeah, we're still figuring things out. It'd mean a lot if you could contribute." I stared at them. "How much are we talking about here?" "Oh, not much," Dad said casually, like he was asking for a cup of sugar. "Just $17,000. That's not unreasonable for a family contribution." I laughed. I couldn't help it. 17,000? Are you serious? You want me to give you that? Mom tilted her head like I was the unreasonable one. "It's not just for Ryan. It's for the family. Weddings are a big deal. You've been through one yourself, so you know how it is." That comment stung more than I'd like to admit. My own wedding had been a disaster, not because of money, but because of the relationship itself. And here they were, acting like I should feel honored to shell out my non-existent savings for Ryan and Kylie's fairy tale. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I don't have that kind of money. And even if I did, why would I spend it on this? You guys just got back from a luxury trip. Maybe cut back a little instead of asking me to cover the bill." Ryan finally spoke up, his tone annoyingly smug. "Wow, way to be supportive. This isn't just about me and Kylie. It's about family. You wouldn't even be living here if it weren't for Mom and Dad. You kind of owe them." That was it. I snapped. "I owe them? Are you kidding me? I've been paying rent since I moved back, covering bills, helping around the house, while you sit here doing nothing." Mom's face turned sour. "That's not fair, and you know it. We've done so much for you, especially after your divorce. The least you can do is show some gratitude." "Gratitude?" I said, practically laughing again. "I'm grateful, sure, but I'm not a bank. You can't just guilt me into giving you money I don't have." Dad shook his head like I was some huge disappointment. "We've been patient with you, but this attitude isn't going to get you anywhere." The room went dead silent. For a second, I thought maybe they'd drop it, but then Mom leaned forward and gave me this look, half pity, half annoyance. "Honey, think about it this way. You're single. You don't have kids to worry about or a spouse to support. It's not like you have any major expenses." That one hit me hard. They made it sound like my life was worthless just because I didn't have a family of my own, like I wasn't allowed to save for myself or have my own plans. "Unbelievable," I muttered, standing up. The answer is no. I'm not giving you $17,000. Not for this. Not for anything." Mom gasped like I just slapped her. "How can you be so selfish? This is for Ryan, for family." "I'm not selfish," I shot back. "You are. You've spent my whole life putting him first, and now you expect me to fund his wedding? No way." As I turned to leave, Dad said, "If that's how you feel, then we need to reevaluate the arrangement here. You're living under our roof, and we've been more than generous. Maybe it's time you start paying your fair share of rent." I froze in the doorway. "I already pay rent." "Not enough," he said. "If you're not going to contribute to the wedding, then you can contribute more here." I wanted to scream. "So let me get this straight. If I don't give you money for Ryan, you're going to make me pay more rent?" Mom nodded, all calm and self-righteous. "It's only fair. You've been here long enough. It's time to step up." I didn't even respond. I just walked out of the room and slammed the door to my tiny bedroom. My heart was pounding, my mind racing. How had it come to this? How had I ended up back in this house, stuck in this toxic cycle? I thought I was doing the right thing, moving back to save money and get back on my feet. I sat on my bed for a long time, staring at the wall, trying to process everything. They really expected me to cough up $17,000 for Ryan's wedding, and when I said no, decided to punish me for it. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about control. They'd always used guilt and manipulation to keep me in line, and now that I was standing up for myself, they didn't know how to handle it. I felt something shift inside me. I was done being their doormat. They could call me selfish, ungrateful, whatever they wanted. I didn't care anymore. My answer was no, and it was going to stay that way. The whole situation with my family hit a new level of ridiculous a few days after the family meeting. Just when I thought they couldn't get more entitled, my mom cornered me in the kitchen while I was eating a sandwich. She had this overly sweet tone, the kind she used when she was about to drop some manipulative suggestion she thought I wouldn't see coming. "So, I've been thinking," she started, sitting down across from me. "You've got that car sitting out there, and it's in really nice shape, isn't it?" I frowned. "Yeah, it's fine." "Why?" She smiled like she'd just come up with the most brilliant idea ever. "Well, you don't really need it, do you? I mean, you work from home most of the time, and when you go out, you're not going far. What if you sold it and put that money toward Ryan and Kylie's wedding? It would make such a difference, and we could all help you get a cheap used car later on if you really need one." I just stared at her. Was she serious? "Wait," I said, holding up a hand. "You want me to sell my car, my only car, to help pay for Ryan's wedding?" She nodded, like this was the most reasonable suggestion in the world. "It's not just for Ryan. It's for the family, and you'd be helping out so much. Besides, think of how much money you'd get for it. It's a nice car." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, I need that car. It's not just for work. It's my only way to get anywhere. I'm not selling it, period." Her smile faded, and she gave me that disappointed look she'd perfected over the years. "You're being so short-sighted. This is an opportunity to show Ryan and Kylie how much you support them. Family helps family, you know." "Right," I shot back. "But apparently family only goes one way in this house. I'm not selling my car, and that's final." She sighed and stood up, shaking her head. "I don't know why you're being so stubborn. You're making this harder than it needs to be." Then she walked out of the kitchen, leaving me sitting there fuming. That conversation was the last straw for me. They wanted me to give up my car, the one thing I'd managed to hold on to through all the crap I'd been through, just so they could throw a fancy party for Ryan and Kylie. It wasn't just entitlement anymore. It was outright insanity. I decided right then and there that I had to get out of that house, no matter what it took. From that point on, I started planning my escape in secret. I wasn't about to let them talk me into anything or guilt me into staying. Every time they brought up the wedding or family contributions, I'd just nod along, pretending to listen, while in my head, I was figuring out my next move. The first step was finding a place to live. I spent hours scrolling through apartment listings, looking for anything remotely affordable. Most of what I found was either way out of my price range or so rundown that I'd probably fall through the floor the second I walked in. But eventually, I found a tiny studio apartment on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, just one room with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but it was clean, and the rent was low enough that I could make it work. When I went to see the place, the landlord seemed skeptical about renting to me. I didn't blame him. I wasn't exactly rolling in cash, and my credit wasn't great after the divorce. But after I scraped together the deposit and promised to pay the first month's rent upfront, he agreed to let me move in. The catch? I had to be out of my parents' house and into the new place by the weekend. That gave me less than 5 days to figure everything out. Packing was the next challenge. I didn't have a ton of stuff, but I knew I couldn't just start loading boxes into my car in broad daylight. If my parents or Ryan saw me, they'd demand to know what I was doing, and I wasn't in the mood for another guilt trip. So I decided to do it in secret. Over the next few days, I started packing little by little, sneaking boxes out to my car when no one was around. I'd wait until my mom was upstairs, or my dad was in the garage, then grab a few things and make a quick run to the car. It felt ridiculous, like I was some kind of criminal plotting an escape, but it was the only way to avoid another confrontation. By Thursday night, I was almost ready to go. My car was packed with everything I needed, and I had the keys to my new apartment in my pocket. All I had to do was make it through one more day without tipping anyone off. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep before making my move. I grabbed the last of my things, just a couple of bags and a box of random stuff, and quietly carried them out to the car. I sat in the car for a while, staring at the dark, silent house. If I tried to explain myself, They'd twist my words, guilt me into staying, or somehow make me feel like the bad guy for wanting my own life. Leaving quietly was the only way to take control. Finally, I started the engine and pulled out of the driveway, careful not to make too much noise. I didn't know what the future held, but at least it was mine to figure out. After I left, I didn't just move out of my parents' house. I cut ties completely. I wasn't half-hearted about it either. I stopped answering texts and calls from my mom, dad, and Ryan on my phone, social media, and even email. I didn't leave any gaps for them to squeeze through. It might sound harsh, but I knew how they operated. If I gave them even an inch, they'd use it to guilt trip me or manipulate me into coming back. I couldn't let that happen. I'd made my decision, and for once, I was sticking to it. That peace didn't last long, though. About 2 months after I moved out, I started hearing through the grapevine that Ryan and Kylie's wedding was turning into a disaster. I hadn't asked for updates. It was just one of those things that people seemed to think I'd want to know about. Honestly, I didn't care much, but the stories were so ridiculous that I couldn't help but pay attention. Apparently, my parents had bitten off way more than they could chew. They'd promised Ryan and Kylie this big fancy wedding, even though they didn't have the money to back it up. They'd been banking on me chipping in, and probably assumed I'd cave eventually, but when that didn't happen, they were stuck scrambling for cash. From what I heard, they tried to get Kylie's family to pitch in, but that didn't go over well. Her parents flat out refused, saying, "If you can't afford a wedding, don't have one." Honestly, I respected that. Of course, my mom didn't take it well. She tried to play the victim, crying about how unfair it was that Kylie's family wasn't helping. But Kylie's mom wasn't having it. She told my mom, "It's not our responsibility to pay for your son's wedding." Ouch. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. Meanwhile, Ryan was stuck in the middle of it all. From what I heard, he was getting frustrated with my parents for overstepping and with Kylie's family for not budging. But instead of stepping up and taking control of the situation, he just let the chaos swirl around him. Classic Ryan, always expecting someone else to clean up his messes. The breaking point came about a month before the wedding. Kylie gave Ryan an ultimatum. Either he set boundaries with my parents, or she was done. She was sick of my mom micromanaging every little detail, and my dad trying to cut corners to save money. She wanted a partner, not a mama's boy, and she was ready to walk if he couldn't figure it out. At first, Ryan chose my parents. Of course he did. They'd been coddling him his whole life, and he wasn't about to rock the boat. He told Kylie she needed to chill, and that my mom just wanted the best for them. Apparently, that didn't go over well. Kylie called off the engagement, packed her things, and moved back in with her parents. It was a mess. My parents were furious, not at Ryan, but at Kylie for abandoning him. My mom even called Kylie ungrateful, which is ironic considering she was the one who ruined the whole thing by trying to control everything. Ryan, for his part, moped around and acted like the victim, telling everyone how heartbroken he was. About 2 weeks after Kylie left, I got a call from an unknown number. I normally don't answer those, but something told me to pick up. Sure enough, it was Kylie. "Hey, it's me," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I know we've never been close, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I blinked, caught completely off guard. Okay. Sorry for what?" "For everything," she said. "For not standing up for you sooner, for all of it." I didn't say anything, mostly because I didn't know what to say. She continued, "I didn't realize how bad it was until I was in the middle of it. Your parents are a lot, and Ryan just lets them do whatever they want. I tried to stick it out, but I couldn't anymore. I'm sorry they put you through that." Her words caught me off guard. It wasn't like I needed her apology, but hearing it felt validating. For years, I'd been treated like I was the problem, like I was the selfish one for not bending over backward to please my parents. And now, here was Kylie, someone who'd been on the other side of it, telling me I wasn't crazy. "Thanks," I said finally. "I appreciate that." We talked for a little while longer, mostly about the wedding drama and how my parents had tried to take over everything. She said she wasn't sure if she and Ryan would work things out, but she didn't sound optimistic. "He's too tied to them," she said. "I don't think he knows how to function without their approval." After we hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotion. On one hand, I felt bad for Kylie. She didn't deserve to get dragged into my family's mess. But on the other hand, I couldn't help but feel a little vindicated. Maybe now people would start to see my parents and Ryan for who they really were. A few days later, I got another call, this time from Ryan. "Hey," he said awkwardly, "can we talk?" "What do you want, Ryan?" I asked, not bothering to hide my annoyance. I screwed up," he said. "Kylie left and Mom and Dad are freaking out, and I feel like everything's falling apart." I leaned back in my chair, waiting for him to get to the point. "I know I've been a jerk," he said finally. "I should have stood up for you. I should have, I don't know, been a better brother. I just want to say I'm sorry. For a second, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to accept his apology and move on, but another part of me couldn't forget all the times he'd stood by while our parents treated me like dirt. Look, I said, I appreciate the apology, but I'm not ready to forgive you. It's going to take time. A lot of time, Ryan sighed. Yeah, I get that. I hope we can fix things someday. Maybe, I said, but not today. For the first time, Ryan had acknowledged how messed up things were. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. Still, I wasn't ready to let him, or anyone else in my family, back into my life. Not yet. Maybe not ever. A few months after the whole wedding drama blew up, I started hearing whispers through mutual friends and acquaintances about my parents. Apparently, things had taken a turn for the worse. It wasn't surprising, really, considering how they always lived way beyond their means. But this time, it sounded serious, like drowning in debt serious. At first, I brushed it off. It wasn't my problem anymore, and I didn't want to get sucked back into their nonsense. But then the calls started. I'd already blocked their numbers so they couldn't contact me directly, but they started using other people to pass messages along. I'd get texts from old neighbors or extended relatives saying things like, "Your mom wanted me to tell you she's worried about you," or "Your dad asked if you could call him. It's important." It was all pretty transparent. They didn't care about me. They just wanted something. That was their go-to move. Feign concern to get their foot in the door and then drop whatever demand they had in mind. I wasn't falling for it this time. Eventually, one of my mom's messages slipped through. A mutual friend, Sarah, who didn't know the full story, forwarded me an email my mom had sent her, thinking it might be urgent. It wasn't. It was just more guilt-tripping. The email was classic Linda. It started off all sweet and concerned. "I hope you've been doing well, honey. I think about you every day and pray that you're okay." Then it quickly shifted gears. "Your father and I have been struggling lately. We've had some unexpected expenses and it's been hard to keep up. I hate to ask, but if you could help us out financially, it would mean so much. Family always comes first, right? Unexpected expenses? Sure. More like they'd burned through their savings trying to throw a wedding they couldn't afford, and now they were paying the price." I didn't reply. I wasn't even tempted to. They'd made their bed, and now they could lie in it. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing more details about just how bad things had gotten. Apparently, they'd maxed out multiple credit cards, trying to cover wedding deposits, decorations, and other nonsense. Then, when Kylie walked away, they lost everything they'd put down. Non-refundable deposits, unpaid balances, the works. They were left with piles of debt and nothing to show for it. On top of that, Ryan had moved out shortly after his apology to me, which meant my parents had lost their golden boy and any financial help he might have contributed. Though let's be real, Ryan wasn't exactly known for pulling his weight. I heard through Sarah that they'd been calling him too, begging him to come back and help them out. He wasn't biting, though. Turns out Kylie had put her foot down and told him that if he ever wanted to make things work with her, he had to set boundaries with my parents. For once, Ryan actually listened to her. He told my mom and dad he couldn't support them financially and that they needed to figure things out on their own. To say they didn't take it well would be an understatement. "They're blaming everyone but themselves," Sarah told me one night over coffee. "Your mom's been telling people that Kylie's family sabotaged the wedding and that you abandoned them in their time of need." I just shook my head. Of course they are. It's never their fault. They're allergic to accountability. Then, one day, I got the message I'd been waiting for. A text from another mutual contact. "Hey, just so you know, your parents are selling the house. They're downsizing because they can't keep up with the mortgage." I wasn't surprised. That house had always been way too big for them, and the upkeep alone must have cost a fortune. But hearing it made everything feel real. They were actually losing their grip on the life they'd spent years trying to project. This image of a perfect, successful family. It was crumbling. And for once, I wasn't the one they could lean on to hold it together. The final straw came about a month later when my dad showed up at my apartment. I didn't even know how he found me. I hadn't given them my new address, and I'd been careful about who I told. But there he was, standing at my door, looking more haggard than I'd ever seen him. He wasn't his usual smug, overconfident self. He looked desperate. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. I didn't want to let him in, but I also didn't want to cause a scene in front of my neighbors. So I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone as flat as possible. "We're in trouble," he said, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Your mom and we've hit a rough patch financially. We're behind on the mortgage and the credit card companies are calling nonstop. We don't know what to do." I folded my arms. "And this has what to do with me?" He gave me that look, the one he always used when he was about to launch into a lecture. But this time, it didn't come. Instead, he just sighed. "You're our son. We thought you might want to help." I laughed bitterly. "Help? Like you helped me when I was struggling? Like you included me in your Italy trip or cared about my feelings during the wedding drama? Sorry, but I don't owe you anything. Don't be like that, he said, his voice rising. We're family. Exactly, I shot back. Family's supposed to support each other, right? Funny how that only applies when it benefits you. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at me like he couldn't believe I was actually saying no. Then he tried a different tactic. What about the house? It's your childhood home. Don't you care about what happens to it? That one stung, but I didn't let it show. It stopped feeling like home a long time ago, I said. Good luck selling it. I didn't give him a chance to respond. I turned and walked back into my apartment, locking the door behind me. After that, I didn't hear from them again. Not directly, anyway. I heard through Sarah that they eventually sold the house and moved into a small rental on the other side of town. They'd burned so many bridges that no one else in the family was willing to help them out either. I knew I'd made the right choice. For years, I'd let them take advantage of me, make me feel like I wasn't enough, and use guilt to control me. Cutting ties was the best decision I'd ever made. Sometimes, walking away isn't about abandoning people. It's about saving yourself. And that's exactly what I did. Story 2. This story is titled, I Bought a House for Myself. Not for my sister who sided with my cheating ex. Now my parents are furious. But I got my ultimate revenge. Hey everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey guys, I'm 34, male, and I never thought I'd be posting on Reddit about this crap. But here we are. I used to have what I thought was a pretty decent life. Decent job as a mechanic at a local garage, a rented house in an okay neighborhood, and a wife, I'll call her Jessica, that I'd been with since college. Nothing fancy, but it was stable, you know? I worked hard, paid the bills on time, and thought I was building something that would last. Jessica and I weren't perfect, but whose relationship is? We had our routines, our inside jokes, our plans for the future. Or at least I thought we did. 2 years ago, my life basically exploded when I walked in on my wife Jessica screwing our neighbor in our bed. Not even making this up. I came home early from work because I wanted to surprise her for our anniversary. Guess the surprise was on me. I still remember the look on her face when she saw me standing in the doorway. Not even embarrassment, just annoyance that I'd interrupted. That's when I knew our 6-year marriage was actually dead long before I opened that bedroom door. The next few weeks were a blur of arguments, fake apologies, and me sleeping on my buddy Mike's couch while trying not to completely lose my mind. Jessica kept saying it was just a mistake and how we could work through this, but then I found texts going back months. This wasn't a one-time thing. She'd been cheating pretty much our entire marriage. The divorce was nasty as hell. She tried to take everything, including the car I'd bought before we even met. Her lawyer was this shark in a suit who kept looking at me like I was dirt. Meanwhile, I could barely afford my lawyer, who honestly seemed more interested in his lunch break than my case. But the worst betrayal wasn't even from Jessica. It was from my sister Amber, 29 female. We'd always been close, or so I thought. Single mom, 2 kids. I'd always helped her out when times were tough. Bought school supplies for my niece and nephew, fixed her car countless times, even paid her rent twice when she was between jobs. And how did she repay me? By completely siding with Jessica. Not because she thought I deserved to be cheated on, but because Jessica was buying her stuff. New clothes, taking her out to fancy restaurants, even babysitting so Amber could go on dates. And the cherry on top? Jessica promised to hook her up with this supposed rich friend of the guy she was cheating with. Amber was literally trading her loyalty for the chance at a sugar daddy. You probably drove her to cheat anyway, Amber told me over the phone when I called her, hurt that she was still hanging out with Jessica. Men never understand what women need. That was the moment I realized I was truly on my own. I hung up, blocked her number, and made a decision right then. I was going to rebuild my life if it killed me. So I packed up the few things Jessica's lawyer let me keep and found the cheapest apartment I could. It was basically a shoebox with a bathroom attached. The kind of place where you can cook dinner, watch TV, and use the toilet without getting up from your bed. Yeah, that's small. I remember sitting on that lumpy mattress the first night, wondering how the hell my life had collapsed so fast. Like 6 months before, I was married, had a decent place to live, thought my sister had my back, and was actually pretty happy. Now, I was in a crappy apartment that smelled like the previous tenant's cats. My wife was screwing half the neighborhood, and my sister was Team Jessica all the way. The worst part was seeing their Instagram posts. Jessica and Amber were suddenly BFFs, posting selfies at restaurants I could never afford to take Jessica to, with these long captions about living your best life and toxic people, meaning me, obviously. One time they even posted from a weekend trip to the beach that Jessica and I had always talked about taking, but never had the money for. Guess she found the money once I wasn't in the picture. My parents weren't much help either. They kept telling me to try to work things out with Jessica because marriage is about compromise. When I told them about catching her literally in bed with another dude, my mom said, "Well, relationships are complicated, honey." Yeah, no kidding, Mom. I think that's what hurt the most. Everyone acting like I was overreacting by being upset that my wife was cheating. Like I was the unreasonable one for not wanting to stay with someone who had been lying to my face for years. The breaking point came when I ran into Amber at the grocery store, about a month after moving into my shoebox apartment. I was buying ramen and cheap coffee, basically my entire diet at that point, and she was loading up on expensive snacks, the kind of stuff she could never afford before. I tried to avoid her, but she spotted me and came over with this fake concerned look. "Oh my God, you look terrible," she said, eyeing my cart. "Are you eating enough?" Before I could answer, she launched into this story about how Jessica was doing so much better now, and how her new boyfriend, the neighbor she'd been cheating with, was so generous, and took them all out to this fancy restaurant last weekend. "You know," she said, leaning in like she was sharing some big secret, "Jessica told me everything about why your marriage failed. You really should have paid more attention to her needs." I just stared at her, not even knowing how to respond to that. My sister, who I'd helped raise after our dad left when she was 12, was standing in front of me basically saying I deserved to be cheated on. "Jessica's new boyfriend might have a friend you'd like," she added with a smirk. "Someone who can afford better groceries than this." She gestured at my cart. I left my groceries right there in the aisle and walked out. Didn't say a word to her. Just turned around and left. That night, I made a plan. I was done feeling sorry for myself. Done letting Jessica and Amber make me feel like I was the problem. I was going to rebuild my life from scratch, and I was going to do it so well that they'd choke on their words. My goal was to work my ass off until I could afford a place of my own. A real place, not a depressing shoebox. Something that was mine that no one could take away from me revenge would taste in the end. So my routine went insane and probably not healthy, but I didn't care. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., hit the crappy gym in my apartment building, basically just a treadmill and some dumbbells in a closet, then get to the garage by 6:30. I'd work until 6 or 7 p.m., sometimes later if we had emergency repairs. Then I'd grab some cheap takeout, go home, and study until my eyes couldn't stay open anymore. Weekends weren't any better. I picked up side jobs fixing cars for cash, changed oil, replaced brake pads, swapped out alternators, basic stuff I could do in parking lots with minimal tools. It wasn't exactly legal, but it paid, and I needed every dollar. The manager, I'll call him Rick, started giving me more responsibilities at the shop. First, it was just ordering parts and talking to customers. Then he let me handle the scheduling and some of the hiring. By month 6, I was basically running the place while he supervised, aka played solitaire in the back office. "You know," he told me one day while we were locking up, "I've owned this place for almost 30 years. Never had someone work as hard as you do. What's driving you, kid?" I thought about telling him the whole sad story. The cheating wife, the backstabbing sister, the whole mess. But instead I just said, "Trying to buy a house." He nodded like that made perfect sense. "Good goal. Nothing better than having your own place. No landlord to answer to. No worrying about rent going up. Smart move." That simple validation meant more to me than he probably realized. In a world where everyone seemed to think I was the bad guy for being upset about being cheated on, having someone just say "good job" was huge. The funny thing is, even though I was working nonstop, I started feeling better. Like the constant activity kept me from sitting around feeling sorry for myself, and seeing actual progress in my bank account every month gave me something to focus on, besides how much my life sucked. Don't get me wrong, I still had plenty of bad days. Days when I'd see a post from Jessica or Amber and have to resist the urge to throw my phone against the wall. Days when a customer would come in who reminded me of Jessica, and I get flashbacks of her cheating. But those days got fewer and farther between as time passed. The online classes were kicking my ass, though. I hadn't been a great student in high school, and trying to learn accounting principles after a 12-hour shift fixing cars was brutal. I failed the first practice exam so bad that my online tutor actually called me to ask if I was okay. But I kept at it, studying during lunch breaks, watching tutorial videos while waiting for parts deliveries, drilling myself with flashcards before bed. Slowly, painfully, I started to get it. And the more I understood, the more I could see how Rick's business could be improved. He was still doing everything old school, paper invoices, no real inventory system, pricing based on gut feeling rather than actual costs. One night, after closing, I showed him a spreadsheet I'd made analyzing the last 6 months of jobs. I'd broken down which services made the most profit, which customers were repeat business, which suppliers gave us the best deals. It was basic stuff I'd learned in my classes, but Rick looked at me like I'd just performed magic. "Where did you learn to do all this?" he asked, scrolling through my analysis. "Online classes," I said. "Been taking them at night." He gave me this long look, then said something that changed everything. "You know, I've been thinking about selling this place when I retire. Always figured I'd just close up shop, but you interested in buying me out someday?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Own the garage? Actually be my own boss? It seemed impossible. "I don't have that kind of money, Rick." He waved his hand dismissively. "We could work something out. Payment plan, you taking over more and more while I phase out. I'd rather sell to someone who gives a damn than some corporation that'll fire everyone and jack up prices." It was the first time in ages that I felt like maybe things might work out. Not just getting by, but actually building something, having a future that I controlled. That night, I went home and added another goal to my list. Not just buy a house, but buy the garage too. It would take longer, require even more work, but the thought of owning my own business, being completely independent, was too good to pass up. About a year into my non-stop grind, things at the shop were going great. Rick had basically made me the manager, and our business was up 30% since I'd started running things. I was saving every penny that didn't go to rent or food. My social life was non-existent, but I didn't care. I had a plan. Then I started hearing whispers that things weren't so perfect in Jessica and Amberland. The guy Jessica had been cheating with? Yeah, he'd moved on to someone else barely 2 months after our divorce was final. Apparently, he wasn't interested in anything serious. And that rich sugar daddy Jessica had promised to introduce Amber to? Turned out he was just some broke dude pretending to be rich to get into clubs. When Amber finally met him, he tried to get her to pay for dinner. The shopping trips slowed down. The fancy vacations stopped. Jessica had blown through most of her divorce money, trying to impress her new boyfriend, who'd now ditched her. And Amber, who'd quit her steady job at the insurance office thinking she was about to land a rich guy, was struggling to find work again. I heard all this through Mike, who was still friends with Jessica's cousin. I didn't say anything when he told me. Didn't laugh or say, "I told you so." Just nodded and kept working on the transmission I was fixing. But inside, I'm not gonna lie, it felt good to know karma was finally showing up. Rick noticed how much effort I was putting in and offered me a deal I never expected. He wanted to start the process of me buying him out of the business. "You're running it anyway," he said. "Might as well own it." We worked out a payment plan that would take years, but it was doable. Between that and my savings, I finally had enough for a down payment on a modest house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it would be mine. The day I signed the papers for the house, I immediately got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Amber. Somehow she'd gotten a new phone and wanted to reconnect. Said she missed her brother and how family should stick together. I didn't respond. I was too busy planning my move. Then one Saturday, I was at the shop late finishing up a complicated engine rebuild when Rick came in. He usually didn't work weekends, so I was surprised to see him. "Don't you ever take a day off?" he asked, shaking his head. I shrugged. Got nowhere else to be. He sat down on the stool next to my workbench. "Look, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. My wife and I are thinking about moving to Arizona. Her arthritis is getting worse, and the cold winters here aren't helping. Doctor says a warmer climate would be good for her." My heart sank. Was he selling the garage to someone else? After all my hard work? "So, what happens to the shop?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He looked at me like I was an idiot. "That's what I want to talk about. I'm ready to accelerate our plan. Instead of the 5-year buyout we discussed, I want to do it in 2. You take over as owner at the end of the year, we work out a payment schedule you can handle, and I head west for some sunshine." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was happening way faster than I'd expected. "I don't know if I have enough saved for that kind of down payment yet," I admitted. "I just put most of my savings toward the house." Rick waved his hand. "We'll figure it out. You've already increased business by 30%. The place is worth more with you running it anyway. Maybe we adjust the percentages a bit. You get a bigger cut of the profits now, but more of that goes toward your ownership stake." We spent the next hour working out the details. By the time he left, we had the outline of a deal that would make me the owner of Rick's Auto Repair by Christmas. It wasn't perfect. I'd be stretching myself financially for a couple of years. But it was doable. And the thought of owning my own business before I turned 35? That was worth the risk. As I was locking up the shop, my phone buzzed with another text from Amber. This one was less friendly than the first. Seriously? You're just going to ignore me? After everything I've done for you? Real mature, bro. I snorted. Everything she'd done for me? Like trash-talking me to my ex-wife? Like mocking my pain while I was at my lowest point? Like choosing Jessica's empty promises over her own brother? I typed out about 5 different angry responses, deleted them all, and finally settled on, busy with work. Talk later. It was non-committal enough that she couldn't accuse me of ignoring her, but vague enough that later could mean basically never. I had no interest in letting Amber back into my life just because her meal ticket had disappeared. When I got home to my crappy apartment that night, I looked around at the packed boxes and cheap furniture and felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: pride. In just a few days, I'd be moving into my own house. In a few months, I'd own my own business, and I'd done it all by myself, while the people who were supposed to love me had been betting on my failure. And because nothing in this life is perfect, the next morning, I got a call from the real estate agent. The seller was trying to back out, claiming they got a better offer. My stomach dropped, but the agent reassured me the contract was airtight. It'd just delay closing by a couple of weeks while their lawyer set them straight. Annoying, but after the year I'd had, one more obstacle wasn't going to stop me. 3 days before I was set to move into my new place, there was a knock at my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the few friends I had left knew I was busy packing. I opened the door to find Amber standing there, looking nothing like the confident woman who'd mocked me at the garage a year ago. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had this desperate look on her face that I recognized. It was the same look she used to have before asking me for money. "Hey, stranger," she said, trying to sound casual. "Can I come in?" I didn't move from the doorway. "What do you want, Amber?" She forced a laugh. "Can't a sister just visit her brother? It's been forever." "Yeah, about a year. Since you came to the shop to brag about Jessica's diamond bracelet," I said, crossing my arms. Her fake smile dropped. "Look, I made some mistakes, okay? I was stupid. Jessica fed me all these lies about you, and I believed her. I'm sorry." I laughed. "Where is Jessica now? Still buying you stuff?" Amber's eyes dropped to the floor. "We're not really hanging out anymore. She's going through some stuff. That means Jessica wasn't useful to her anymore." I sighed. Again. "What do you want, Amber?" That's when she noticed the boxes behind me. "Are you moving?" "Yep. Bought a house. Closing was last week." Her eyes lit up like I just offered her a winning lottery ticket. "A house? That's amazing. How many bedrooms?" And there it was. I could see the wheels turning in her head. "3," I said, knowing exactly where this was going. "That's perfect," she exclaimed, way too enthusiastically. "Because, well, I'm kind of in a situation. My landlord's selling the building, and we have to be out by the end of the month. The kids and I have been looking, but you know how crazy rent is these days." I just stared at her, waiting for her to get to the point. "So I was thinking," she continued, "maybe we could help each other out. The kids and I could move in with you. We wouldn't be any trouble. I could help with bills once I find a new job, and the kids would love having their uncle around." The audacity was actually impressive. After everything, the betrayal, the mockery, the complete dismissal of my pain, she really thought she could just show up and get a free place to live. "No," I said simply. Her smile faltered. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no, you can't live with me. Not now, not ever." She switched tactics immediately, her eyes welling up with tears. "But the kids, they have nowhere to go. We might end up in a shelter. Is that what you want? Your own niece and nephew homeless because you're too selfish to help?" That's when I lost it. Not by yelling or slamming the door, but by laughing. I couldn't help it. The sheer manipulation was so transparent. "Where were you when Jessica was screwing around behind my back?" I asked. "Where were you when I was sleeping on Mike's couch? When I lost my house, my savings, my marriage? Oh, right. You were shopping with the woman who destroyed my life, laughing about what a loser I was." Her face went pale. "That's not... I didn't mean..." I started to close the door, but she stuck her foot in the way. "Please," she begged, real desperation in her voice now. "I have nowhere else to go. Mom and Dad won't help. Jessica's ghosting me and my friends. They can't take us in." "That sounds like a you problem," I said, echoing the exact words she'd said to me when I told her Jessica had taken most of our joint account before I could freeze it. I moved her foot and closed the door. For about 5 minutes, she stood out there knocking and calling my name. I ignored her completely, going back to packing boxes like she wasn't even there. Eventually, she gave up and left. I thought that would be the end of it. I should have known better. The next day, my phone started blowing up with texts and calls, not just from Amber, but from my parents too. Apparently, Amber had gone straight to them with some sob story about how I was refusing to help her and the kids in their time of need. My mom's voicemail was classic guilt trip material. I raised you better than this. Family helps family. I can't believe you would let your sister and those poor children suffer when you have a whole house to yourself. Never mind that my parents had barely reached out during my divorce. Never mind that they'd suggested I try to work things out with Jessica, even after I told them about the cheating. Never mind that they'd done absolutely nothing to help me when I was the one in crisis. My dad's message was worse. Son, I'm disappointed in you. A man takes care of his family. Your sister needs help, and you're in a position to provide it. That's your responsibility as her brother. I hadn't heard from my dad in months, and this was what finally got him to call? Telling me I wasn't being man enough because I wouldn't let my backstabbing sister move into the house I'd worked my ass off to buy? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on finishing my packing and coordinating with the moving company. I had taken the day off from the garage specifically to get everything ready for the move, and I wasn't going to waste it dealing with family drama. Then came the text that really set me off. It was from Jessica. Yeah, my ex-wife, the woman who'd cheated on me for most of our marriage, thought she had the right to weigh in. I know we're not on the best terms, but I'm really worried about Amber and the kids. She says you bought a house with plenty of room but won't help them. That doesn't sound like the man I married. Please reconsider. The hypocrisy was so stunning I had to read it twice. I finally broke my silence with a single reply. The man you married no longer exists. You killed him. Do not contact me again. Then I blocked her number. By that evening, the messages from my family had taken on a more threatening tone. My mom was now saying she was going to have to get involved if I didn't do the right thing. My dad mentioned something about coming over to talk some sense into me. Amber had switched from begging to angry accusations about how I was showing my true colors and always was the selfish one. I didn't care anymore. Let them come. Let them threaten. I was done being the family doormat. The next morning, I woke up to a new voice message from an unknown number. It was Jessica's mother, my former mother-in-law, telling me she was very disappointed in how I was treating Amber and that she had raised Jessica to believe family comes first. I nearly choked on my coffee. Yeah, Jessica really put family first when she was screwing the neighbor. I realized they were pulling out all the stops, contacting anyone they thought might have influence over me. It was pathetic and desperate, but also a little scary. How far were they willing to go? I decided to take some precautions. I called the real estate agent and asked if we could move up the closing date. Explained that I had some family issues and needed to get into the house as soon as possible. She said she'd try, but no promises. Then I called Rick and explained the situation. He was surprisingly understanding, even offering to let me crash at his place if things got too intense with my family. I also called Mike, who had been my rock through the divorce. He immediately offered to come over and help me finish packing, and to be there when I moved in case my family tried to show up and cause trouble. Dude, he said, they're only coming around now because you're doing well. Where were they when you were sleeping on my couch? Screw them. It felt good to have people in my corner, even if they weren't blood relatives. That afternoon, the real estate agent called with good news. We could close the next day. The seller had finally accepted that they couldn't back out, and all the paperwork was ready. I'd be able to move into my new house 48 hours earlier than planned. I didn't tell anyone in my family about the change in plans. Let them show up at my empty apartment. By then, I'd be safely in my new home, with a security system installed and no forwarding address left behind. Moving day came, and I left my crappy apartment behind for good. My new house wasn't anything special by most people's standards, but to me, it was everything. I spent that first night sitting on my back porch with a cold soda, looking up at the stars, feeling like I could finally breathe again. And I did something I probably shouldn't have. I posted a few photos of my new place on Facebook. Nothing flashy, just a simple new chapter, new home post. I knew Amber would see it. I knew my parents would see it. Part of me wanted them to. The reactions were immediate. Friends I hadn't talked to in ages congratulated me. Guys from the shop liked the post. A few people from high school commented about how well I was doing. And then the private messages started. My dad telling me how disappointed he was that I would flaunt my success while your sister struggles. My mom saying I was being needlessly cruel. And Amber? She went nuclear. She posted this long, dramatic rant on her page about how money changes people. She didn't tag me, but everyone knew who she was talking about. I didn't engage with their drama. I focused on the garage. Business was booming. And Rick was talking about retiring earlier than planned. We were working out the details of me taking over completely within the next year. For the first time since finding Jessica with that guy, I was actually happy. Not just surviving, but thriving. And I'd done it all on my own. But of course, they couldn't just let me be. 3 days after I moved in, my mom called from a new number I hadn't blocked yet. I picked up without checking caller ID, thinking it might be a client from the garage. Hello? Finally, you answer. My mom's voice was that special mix of relief and accusation. We've been trying to reach you for days. I sighed. What do you want, Mom? What do I want? I want you to act like the son I raised. Your sister and those children are about to be homeless, and you're ignoring their calls while living in a big empty house all by yourself. I had to laugh at that. Big empty house? Mom, it's a modest 3-bedroom in a middle-class neighborhood, and it's not empty. I live here. You know what I mean, she snapped. You have room, they need room. It's that simple. Nothing's ever that simple, I said. Where was all this family concern when Jessica was cheating on me? When I was the one who lost everything? There was a pause on the line. Then, in a softer voice, she said, that was different. How? How was it different? I demanded. You're a man, she said. Like that explained everything. Men can take care of themselves. Amber has children. And there it was. The double standard that had defined my entire relationship with my family. I was expected to handle everything on my own, to sacrifice, to be the strong one. But Amber, she got endless excuses. Mom, I said, keeping my voice calm, I worked 80-hour weeks for 2 years to afford this house. I took online classes after 12-hour shifts at the garage. I lived in an apartment where the bathroom ceiling leaked when the upstairs neighbor took a shower. I did all that by myself, without help from anyone, especially not my family. So no, Amber can't live with me. She made her choice when she sided with Jessica, and now she can deal with the consequences. She made a mistake, my mom insisted. People make mistakes. Yeah, they do, I agreed. And sometimes those mistakes have consequences that can't be fixed with a simple sorry. This is one of those times. So you'll punish the children too? They didn't do anything wrong. It was a low blow, using my niece and nephew against me. I loved those kids, even though I hadn't seen them much since the divorce. But I knew what would happen if I let Amber move in. She'd never leave. And eventually, I'd end up supporting all 3 of them, while she went back to her old ways. The kids have grandparents with a 4-bedroom house, I pointed out. Why aren't they moving in with you and Dad? Another telling pause. Your father and I are too old to have children running around. We need our peace and quiet. They wanted to use my house as a dumping ground for Amber's problems, so they wouldn't have to deal with them. Well, I need my peace and quiet too, I said. After the past 2 years, I've earned it. This isn't over, my mom warned before hanging up. She was right about that, at least. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next day, I came home from work to find Amber's car parked in my driveway. She was sitting on my front porch with her kids, surrounded by suitcases and garbage bags full of clothes. What the hell is this? I asked as I got out of my truck. We got evicted, she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. We have nowhere else to go. The kids looked confused and tired. I felt bad for them, but this level of manipulation made my blood boil.
She said defiantly.
So you thought you'd just
said
show up
no,
at my house with
but
all
I
your
know
stuff
you didn't really
without
mean it.
even asking
You
if it
wouldn't
was
let
okay?
your own niece and nephew be homeless. She was trying to back me into a corner, using the kids as shields. It was a dirty move, but exactly what I'd expect from her. Get in your car and leave, I said firmly. Now. Or what? She challenged. You'll call the cops on your own sister? With her kids right here? I took a deep breath. Amber, this isn't going to work. I'm not letting you guilt me into this. Take the kids to Mom and Dad's. They won't take us, she admitted. They said they're too old for kids. Then call Jessica, I suggested. You two were best friends, remember? Shopping buddies. She can put you up. Amber's face darkened. Jessica is... We're not really talking anymore. Shocking, I muttered. Look, I feel for the kids, I really do. But you can't stay here. You're a real piece of work, Amber spat. Acting all high and mighty because you've got a house now. Newsflash, you're still the same loser Jessica cheated on. No wonder she couldn't stay faithful. Who would want to be with someone so selfish and cold? And just like that, any guilt I might have felt vanished. That was the real Amber. The one who had mocked my pain, who had chosen Jessica over her own brother, who was now trying to manipulate me using her children. Get off my property, I said coldly. Now, or I really will call the cops. She must have seen something in my face that told her I meant it, because she started gathering up her bags. Come on, kids, she said loudly. Your uncle doesn't want us. We'll figure something out on our own, like we always do. A week after Amber's little stunt on my porch, I thought things would finally settle down. I had my house, my business, my peace. But people like her and Jessica, they don't go down without one last desperate attempt. I knew better, so I took my caution. So, the morning after Amber's stunt on my porch, I went straight to the county clerk's office and filed for a no trespassing order against her. The process was easier than I expected. Turns out when someone shows up with bags and kids trying to force their way into your home, that's actual grounds for concern. The police officer I spoke to said I had enough evidence to enforce it immediately. She also suggested installing cameras in case Amber tried anything again. So that's exactly what I did. By noon, I had security cameras covering every inch of my property, with motion alerts sent straight to my phone. Let Amber try another sob story ambush. I'd have the cops at my doorstep before she could get comfortable. But then Jessica showed up out of nowhere. It was late, close to midnight, and I was just getting home from the garage. My porch light caught the figure sitting on my front steps, arms wrapped around herself. It took me a second, but when she looked up, I recognized her. Jessica. She looked terrible. Nothing like the put-together woman who used to flaunt new jewelry on Instagram while mocking me behind my back. Her hair was a mess. She had bags under her eyes, and she looked smaller somehow, like life had finally knocked her down a few pegs. "Matt," she said, her voice weak. I didn't know where else to go. I laughed at the sheer audacity. "Not my problem," I said, stepping around her to unlock my door. "Please," she said, standing quickly. Just talk to me." I sighed. "Talk about what, Jessica? How you cheated on me for years? How you ran through the divorce money and got dumped? Or maybe how you encouraged my sister to turn against me? Pick one." She flinched, but I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. "I made mistakes," she whispered, swallowing hard. "I was stupid. I thought—" She stopped, rubbing her arms like she was trying to hold herself together. "I thought I had everything figured out, but I didn't. He left me, Matt, just like that. One day I woke up and he was gone. Took everything. I lost my job, my apartment. I'm back at my mom's place, and she's threatening to kick me out. Sounds like karma," I said, stepping inside. She grabbed my arm before I could close the door. "I loved you," she blurted, tears in her eyes. "I know I messed up, but we had something real. Don't you ever miss it?" I stared at her for a long moment, then smiled. "No," I said, and shut the door in her face. I stood there listening as she cried outside for a minute before finally giving up and leaving. I didn't feel a damn thing. She was just another person from my past, desperate to claw her way back in. But that door was locked, and I was never opening it again. Amber must have found out about Jessica's failed attempt, because 2 days later, my parents showed up unannounced. I opened the door to see my mom with her arms crossed, my dad already looking pissed. "We need to talk," my mom said, stepping past me into the house like she still had authority over me. I let them in, if only to get it over with. They didn't waste time. "Your sister is in trouble," my dad started. "She needs a place to stay. A good son would help her." "A good son?" I repeated, laughing. "Funny. I don't remember hearing from you when I was the one who needed help." My mom's face hardened. "That was different. You're a man. Amber has children. And I told her to take them to you," I shot back. "But I guess your peace and quiet is more important, huh? You want me to be the responsible one, but only when it benefits you." My dad stood up, voice cold. "You're selfish. You let money change you. You're not the son we raised." That hit, but not in the way they intended. I just nodded. "You're right. I'm not the son you raised. That guy would have let himself be guilted into taking care of a woman who betrayed him. That guy would have kept giving to people who never gave back. That guy would have let his family walk all over him." I looked them both in the eye. "But that guy's gone, and you should probably leave." My mom huffed, grabbing her purse. "You'll regret this." "Doubt it," I said, holding the door open. They left without another word. I closed the door behind them, locked it, and stood there for a second, taking it all in. I wasn't their son anymore. Good. I didn't need to be. I had a house, a business, a future. I built it all from scratch. And as I stood in my own home with nobody left to drag me down, I realized something. I'd never been freer in my entire life. Story 3. This story is titled, "I've never been attracted to you," my wife casually admitted, so I left without a word. But she didn't expect what happened next. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Guess I should start at the beginning, right? I, 32 male, really thought I had a good marriage with Amanda, 29 female.
Not like fairy tale perfect or anything, but solid AF. We'd been together almost 4 years, married for 2, and I honestly believed we were doing pretty good. I worked my ass off at my construction management job, making sure we had a nice place in a decent neighborhood, took her out regularly, bought her little gifts, the whole package. I straight up loved this woman. Like, wake up feeling lucky just to see her face kind of love. She seemed sweet too, always making my lunch for work, sending cute texts during the day, planning these small surprises that showed she cared. That's what I thought anyway. This one time when I got the flu real bad, she stayed home from her job to take care of me. Made soup, kept checking if I needed anything, all that stuff. Makes you feel like you've got someone who gives a shit about you, right? But around a couple months ago, things started feeling weird. Not any big thing at first. Just little changes in how she acted around me. She started coming home from her accounting job looking totally drained. Not normal tired, like emotionally empty. I'd ask about her day, and she'd just mumble fine and zone out watching TV. Before, she was always telling me these wild stories about her crazy coworkers or clients, but now, nothing. What really got me worried was how she'd just blank out sometimes. We'd be eating dinner, and I'd notice she wasn't even touching her food, just staring at nothing like her mind was somewhere else completely. When I'd ask what she was thinking about, she'd snap out of it and say, nothing, or just work stuff. Then she'd force this fake smile that never reached her eyes. Babe, is everything okay between us? I asked her one night after she'd barely said 10 words to me all evening. She looked at me with this weird expression, almost guilty. Everything's fine, Ryan. I'm just going through some stuff at work. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? We're a team. I know, she said, giving me that fake smile again. I just need some space to figure things out. It's nothing for you to worry about. But I did worry. I started paying more attention, trying to figure out what was going on. Was she depressed? Working too much? Was it something I did? I started bringing her little gifts, planning date nights, trying to reconnect. Sometimes she'd seem happy about it, but it always felt forced, like she was putting on an act. Then came the day I heard something that made my stomach drop. I'd come home early from work because we finished a project ahead of schedule. As I was walking up to the door, I heard Amanda's voice through the open window. She was on the phone with her sister, Katie. I just don't know how to tell him, she was saying, her voice all serious. It's not like he did anything wrong. He's a good guy. That's what makes this so hard. Katie was put on speaker, so I heard everything. Just rip the Band-Aid off. Katie replied, divorce is never easy, but dragging it out only makes it worse. My heart practically stopped. Divorce? What the fuck? I stood there frozen, not sure if I should go in or wait to hear more. But then Amanda started moving around and I panicked. I backed away, got in my truck, and drove around for an hour trying to process what I just heard. When I finally went home, I convinced myself I'd misunderstood. Maybe Katie was getting divorced. Yeah, that had to be it. Amanda's sister was always having relationship drama. It couldn't be about us. We were solid. Maybe not perfect lately, but nothing divorce-worthy. I walked in acting normal, and Amanda was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. She looked up and seemed startled to see me. Hey, you're home early, she said, quickly putting her phone face down. Yeah, we finished that project ahead of schedule, I said, watching her carefully. Everything good with Katie? Her eyes widened just slightly. Katie? Oh yeah, just the usual stuff with her. I nodded, pretending to buy it. But inside, I was more confused than ever. Why was she lying? And what was she hiding on her phone? The next couple weeks were weird as hell. I kept playing that conversation in my head over and over. Amanda seemed more distant than ever. She was staying later at work, going out more with coworkers she never really talked about. I started wondering if maybe she was cheating. I know it's probably pathetic, but I started checking her socials more, looking for any clues about what was going on. But her Instagram was the same old boring food pics and office selfies. Her texts didn't show anything weird when I glanced at them. I tried stepping up my game even more. Cooked her favorite meals, suggested a weekend getaway, even bought her this necklace she'd been eyeing for months. She seemed touched, but there was still something off in her eyes, like she was looking at me and feeling guilty about something. That night I lay awake next to her, wondering if our whole marriage was just some kind of story I'd made up in my head. I kept thinking, what if everything I thought was real wasn't? Then came that Friday night where everything shattered. Amanda said she was going out with work friends for some office thing. Been happening more lately. She'd come home tipsy and go straight to bed. But this night was different. I was half asleep on the couch, watching some stupid movie when she stumbled in around midnight. She wasn't just tipsy, she was totally wasted. Her makeup was all smeared, and she could barely walk straight. Hey, I said, sitting up.
You good? I'm fine, she slurred, dropping her purse on the floor. She kicked off her heels and flopped down next to me on the couch. She smelled like she'd bathed in perfume, probably trying to cover up the smell of all the shots she'd done. Have fun? I asked, trying to sound normal even though seeing her this messed up was making me nervous. So much fun, she giggled, leaning her head on my shoulder. The girls are so awesome. So much better than hanging around the office with all the boring people. Then she got this weird look on her face and started playing with my hair. You know what one of the girls asked me tonight? What's that? I asked, getting even more uncomfortable. She asked if I was happy. Like really happy. With my life and stuff. Amanda's voice got all serious suddenly. Am I happy, Ryan? I don't even know anymore. This was definitely not normal drunk Amanda talk. I thought you were, I said carefully. She sighed dramatically. You're such a good guy, you know that? Like, so good that it hurts? The way she said it didn't sound like a compliment. Thanks, I said, not sure where this was going. No, really, she continued, waving her hand around. You're good. You're stable. You're reliable. Everything my parents ever wanted for me. I felt my chest get tight. And what's wrong with that? She laughed this weird laugh. Nothing. Nothing's wrong with it. That's why I married you. Because on paper, you're perfect. On paper? The way she said it made it sound like an insult. She turned to look at me with unfocused eyes. Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone? I nodded, even though every instinct was telling me to shut this conversation down. I was never really attracted to you, she said, the words just spilling out of her like she was talking about the weather. Not even from the beginning. I liked you. I respected you. But that spark thing? That makes you want to tear someone's clothes off? Never had it with you. It felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. What the fuck, Amanda? My family was always on my case, she continued like I hadn't said anything. When are you going to settle down? When are you going to find a nice guy? Stop wasting time with losers. She waved her hand around. Then I met you, and you were everything they wanted for me. And I thought, maybe this is what being an adult is. Maybe passion doesn't matter as much as stability. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So what? I was just convenient? A fucking checkbox on your life plan? No, 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 she said, reaching for my hand, which I pulled away. I do love you, Ryan. Just not the way a wife should love her husband. Not the way I loved. She stopped herself. The way you loved who? I demanded, everything suddenly clicking into place. There's someone else, isn't there? There's always been someone else. She closed her eyes, and I could see tears starting. It doesn't matter. He's gone. Has been for years. At that point, I didn't argue. I just froze and listened to her yapping nonsense. You know, she continued after a minute, her words still slurring together. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd followed my heart instead of my head. But my parents would have disowned me. They hated him so much. She let out this bitter laugh. They love you, though. Everyone loves Ryan. So dependable. So steady. Each word felt like a knife. All this time, I thought we had something real. Meanwhile, she was just settling for me because I looked good to her family. I wanted to feel it, you know? She continued, staring at the ceiling. I tried so hard to feel the way I was supposed to. And you're so nice to me. Always doing things for me. Making me feel guilty for not loving you the right way. I didn't realize loving your husband was such a fucking burden, I said, my voice shaking. It's not a burden, she said, her eyes getting heavy. It's just not what I thought it would be. Not what I felt with him. Who is he? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Doesn't matter, she mumbled, her eyes closing. Gone now. Long gone. She passed out right there on the couch a few minutes later, still in her dress, makeup smeared across her face. I sat there in the dark, feeling like my entire world had just collapsed. Everything I thought I knew about us was a lie. Every kiss, every I love you, every night we spent together, all built on bullshit. I was just the safe choice, the guy her parents approved of, the backup plan for when her real love didn't work out. I grabbed a blanket and put it over her, not because I felt any kindness toward her in that moment, but because it was just automatic after 4 years together. Then I went to our bedroom alone and packed an overnight bag. I couldn't stay in that house. Not after what I'd just heard. I checked into a motel a few miles away. Didn't even text her to say where I was. Just needed to be away from her and process what the fuck had just happened. I lay on that lumpy motel bed staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over. I was never really attracted to you. I couldn't stop wondering who this guy was. This person she'd apparently been comparing me to for our entire relationship. I had so many questions, but I wasn't sure I could handle the answers. By morning, my phone had about 20 missed calls and texts from Amanda. Typical panicked stuff. Where are you? I'm so sorry. Please come home. I didn't mean what I said. I was drunk and stupid. Please call me back. I finally texted back, need some time. Don't contact me for a few days. Then I turned off my phone and just sat there in that crappy motel room, trying to figure out what to do next. My entire marriage, my whole future that I thought I had planned out, it was all based on a lie. She'd never wanted me, not really. I was just the safe choice, the guy who looked good on paper. I called in sick to work for the first time in like 3 years. Couldn't face anyone, couldn't pretend everything was normal when my whole life had just blown up. I needed answers. Needed to understand how I'd been so fucking blind. The worst part? A small voice in the back of my head kept saying, maybe I'd known all along. Maybe I'd sensed that her feelings weren't as strong as mine, that something was missing. But I'd ignored it because I wanted so badly to believe she loved me the way I loved her. Monday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I couldn't face anyone, couldn't pretend everything was normal when my whole life had just exploded. I needed answers, needed to understand how I'd been so fucking blind. I remembered that one person who might know the truth. Jen, Amanda's best friend since college. If anyone knew about this mystery guy Amanda was still hung up on, it would be her. I'd always gotten along decent with Jen. Not like we were buddies or anything, but she seemed to approve of me and Amanda together. Would she tell me the truth? Only one way to find out. I texted Jen asking if we could meet up for coffee. Just said I needed to talk about Amanda. She seemed surprised but agreed. We met at this little cafe downtown. Neutral territory. Man, the look on her face when she saw me told me everything. She knew. She fucking knew my marriage was a sham and never said anything. I tried to stay calm though. Getting pissed wouldn't get me answers. I didn't beat around the bush. Just straight up told her that Amanda had confessed everything when she was wasted. About how she was never attracted to me, how she married me to make her family happy, how there was someone else she really loved. I watched Jen's face the whole time, looking for any reaction that would tell me she was surprised. There wasn't one. This wasn't news to her. Jen tried to soften it at first, saying Amanda did care about me, just maybe not in the way I thought. Like that was supposed to make me feel better? But when I pressed her about who this guy was, she got all uncomfortable and said it wasn't her story to tell. That pissed me off. My whole marriage had been a lie, and she was worried about betraying Amanda's confidence? I pushed harder, and Jen finally gave me some basics. Said it was someone from before Amanda met me. Someone her parents hated. It ended badly, and Amanda was a mess afterward. Then she met me, and I was stable and kind. And Jen thinks Amanda genuinely wanted it to work. When I asked when exactly Amanda started acting weird, Jen said it was around January. That's when it clicked. January was when Amanda's company merged with another firm. When she'd started having all those after-work events and coming home later, the pieces were starting to fit together. I flat out asked Jen if this guy was back in Amanda's life, if he was working with her now. She didn't want to answer, but her face gave it away. I knew right then that whoever this dude was, he was back. And that's why Amanda had been so distant. I left that coffee shop with my mind racing. If this guy was back, if they were working together, that explained everything. Her distance, her guilt, those mysterious late nights at work. Back at the motel, I tried to come up with a plan. I needed to know everything. All the lies. All the secrets. Before I could figure out what to do next, I had to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I decided to go back to our house when I knew Amanda would be at work. I didn't want to face her yet, didn't trust myself to keep it together if I had to look at her. The house felt different now, like I was walking into a stranger's place. I headed straight for our home office. Amanda always left her laptop unlocked, another sign of how much she trusted me, or maybe how little she thought I'd ever question her. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but I needed answers. Started with her emails, scanning through work communications, looking for anything suspicious. Nothing jumped out at first. Then I checked her Google Drive and found a folder labeled Personal that I'd never seen before. Inside were dozens of documents that looked like journal entries. The first one was dated from 6 years ago, before we'd even met. I saw him today. Derek. He was with some blonde, laughing like he didn't have a care in the world. It's been 2 years since he left, and it still feels like yesterday. Mom says I need to move on. Find someone appropriate this time. As if my heart is just something I can control. As if I can just decide who to love. Derek. I finally had a name. I kept reading, scrolling through entry after entry, watching the timeline of our relationship unfold from her perspective. The entries from when we first met were almost clinical. Ryan seems nice, stable job, good family, polite, mom already loves him. He's nothing like Derek, which I guess is the point. My heart started aching. And there was one from right before our engagement. Ryan proposed tonight. I said yes. Everyone's thrilled, saying how lucky I am because he's a good guy, crazy about me. But right now it feels like someone tore my heart out. Still, that should be enough, right? People settle down for way less every day. Maybe eventually, my feelings will catch up, and this ache in my chest will fade. It has to. It made me sick to read it. All this time, I thought we had something real. Meanwhile, she was convincing herself to settle for me. I also saw the entries from January of this year. Derek's back. His company merged with ours, and suddenly he's there, in the same building, taking up all the oxygen. He looks the same, but different, more mature. He asked about my life, and I showed him pictures of Ryan and our house, talking about how happy I am. The biggest lie I've ever told. We had drinks after work. Just as colleagues, I told myself. But the way he looks at me, it's still there. That electricity. That feeling that nothing else matters when he's around. What am I going to do? I can't sleep. Can't eat. All I think about is Derek. Ryan's been so attentive lately, bringing me flowers, planning date nights. It makes me feel like the worst person in the world. He deserves someone who feels about him the way I feel about Derek. Always have. There were more recent entries, too, showing her guilt, her confusion, her attempts to recommit to our marriage. But it was too late. The damage was done. I closed the laptop feeling completely numb. There it was, in black and white. I'd never been anything but a substitute, a placeholder for the guy she really wanted. I took pictures of some of the entries with my phone, then put everything back where I found it. I wasn't confronting her yet. I needed time to think, to plan my exit, because one thing was crystal clear. There was no coming back from this. I went back to the motel and just sat there, staring at the photos I'd taken of her journal. 4 years of my life wasted on someone who was just using me as a stand-in, a backup plan, while she pined for someone else. Every memory I had with her was tainted now. Every happy moment, every vacation, every holiday. None of it was real. Not for her. I just felt empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left a hollow shell. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew I couldn't stay married to Amanda. Not after learning the truth. That night, I finally called my brother Jake and told him everything. He was the only person I could trust with this shit. He wanted me to come stay with him, but I wasn't ready to face anyone yet. I needed to get my head straight first. Fuck her, Jake said. You deserve better than that lying bitch. He was right. I did deserve better. The next morning, I called a lawyer. It was time to end this sham of a marriage. I just wished I'd known the truth years ago, before I wasted so much of my life loving someone who never really loved me back. I spent the next week planning my exit strategy, met with the lawyer twice, started separating our finances, looked at apartments. I didn't tell anyone what was happening, not even my close friends. I couldn't stand the thought of saying it out loud. Amanda kept texting and calling nonstop. She even showed up at my work once, but I managed to avoid her. I only sent brief messages that I was okay but needed space. She was freaking out, I could tell, probably worried I'd found out about Derek. The lawyer said I had a solid case for at-fault divorce based on emotional infidelity. But honestly, I just wanted out as clean and fast as possible. I didn't even care about getting everything I was entitled to. Just wanted to be done with this fake marriage. After about 10 days of staying away, I decided it was time to face Amanda and tell her I knew everything. I arranged to meet her at our house on a Saturday afternoon. I'd already moved some essentials to a new apartment I'd found, so I wasn't going to be trapped there. Driving up to the house felt weird as hell. This place I thought we were building together. It was all based on a lie. I sat in my truck for a minute, trying to prepare myself for whatever she might say or do. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. When I finally went inside, Amanda looked terrible. Her hair was a mess. She had dark circles under her eyes, and she was wearing one of my old sweatshirts. Classic move, wearing my clothes to play on my emotions. She ran toward me like she was going to hug me, but I stepped back. She launched into this whole speech about how sorry she was, how the things she said when she was wasted weren't true, how she'd been stressed about work and took it out on me. She kept saying she loved me, that she'd always loved me, that she couldn't imagine her life without me. I let her talk herself out, just stood there watching her perform, because that's what it was, a performance, one she'd been giving our entire relationship. When she finally stopped, I told her I knew about Derek. The color drained from her face. She tried to play dumb at first, asking who, like she had no idea what I was talking about. But when I told her I'd read her journal entries and seen the letters, she collapsed onto the couch. For a minute, she just sat there staring at her hands. Then the excuses started pouring out.
Derek was just an old flame. Those journal entries were just a way to process confused feelings. She'd been trying to let go of the past and focus on our marriage. I didn't buy any of it. I told her I'd read everything. I knew she'd been comparing me to him our entire marriage. I knew she'd been pretending when we were intimate, maybe imagining him. I knew she saw me as the safe, boring choice her parents approved of. Then she switched tactics. Started saying I'd invaded her privacy, that checking her computer was a violation of trust. Like she was the victim here. I almost laughed. The fucking nerve of this woman, cheating emotionally for our entire marriage, and somehow trying to make me the bad guy for finding out. I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and set them on the coffee table. Told her I was filing for divorce and had already moved most of my stuff out. That's when the waterworks really started. Full on sobbing, saying I was throwing away everything we'd built together over a stupid mistake. I asked her which mistake she meant. Marrying someone she wasn't attracted to? Writing love letters to another man while wearing my ring? Or lying to me every single day for 4 years? She got real quiet after that. Then came the line that really showed who she was. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? I cooked for you, cleaned for you, supported your career, played the perfect wife at all your work functions. I gave you the best years of my life. That's when I lost it a little. Told her I never asked for a perfect wife. I just wanted someone who actually loved me, who didn't have to pretend when we were together, who wasn't secretly writing love letters to another man while I was busting my ass trying to build a life for us. I suffered through sex with you for 4 years, she yelled, her face getting all red. Do you know what that's like? To let someone touch you when you're not attracted to them at all? I did that for you, because I was trying to make it work. And there it was. The truth, finally. She saw being intimate with me as something she suffered through. Every time I thought I couldn't feel more humiliated, she found a new way to twist the knife. I stayed calm somehow. Just said, thank you for finally being honest. This makes my decision even easier. She backtracked immediately, saying she didn't mean it. She was just angry and hurt. But I was done listening to her lies. I told her to sign the papers or don't. Either way, I was gone. I wasn't going to fight, wasn't going to drag it out. I just wanted to be free of her and this fake marriage. As I was leaving, she grabbed my arm and said something I'll never forget. He doesn't want me either, you know. Derek. He just wanted the thrill of sneaking around. Once I told him I might leave you for him, he backed off, said he wasn't looking for anything serious. That's not my problem anymore, I said, and walked out the door. I went straight to my new apartment. No fake relationship, no pretending. Just a place where I could start to rebuild my life without living a lie. That night, Amanda blew up my phone with texts and calls. She veered between begging me to come back and threatening me with how hard she'd make the divorce if I didn't. I didn't respond to any of it, just silenced my phone and tried to get some sleep in my new place. I wasn't naive enough to think this was over. Amanda wasn't the type to just let me walk away. She'd invested too much in our marriage. Not because she loved me, but because it made her look good to others. The perfect husband, the perfect house, the perfect life. All a show she put on for everyone else. 3 days after our confrontation, a delivery guy showed up at my apartment with like 20 bags of takeout from my favorite restaurant. There was a note saying, I remember what you like. I do pay attention. Please call me. I gave the food to my neighbors and didn't respond. Meanwhile, I was just trying to get my shit together. I went back to work and had to deal with all the awkward questions about why I suddenly moved out. I gave vague answers about growing apart because I didn't want to get into the humiliating truth. But about 2 weeks after I left, Amanda showed up at my apartment unannounced. Just knocked on the door on a Sunday morning while I was still in my pajamas. She looked different. She'd cut her hair short and was dressed up like she was going to church or something. Totally not her usual style. I almost didn't let her in, but my neighbors were in the hallway, and I didn't want to make a scene. Big mistake. As soon as the door closed behind her, she started crying, saying she'd made the biggest mistake of her life and she'd do anything to fix it. When I didn't immediately fold, she switched tactics and started listing all the practical reasons we should stay together. The house we'd lose, the financial hit we'd take, what our families would think, how dating again in our 30s would suck. Not once did she mention actually loving me. Just all these external reasons that had nothing to do with genuine feelings. I pointed this out, and she got frustrated. Said of course she loved me. That went without saying. I told her that was exactly the problem. It always went without saying, because she couldn't say it honestly. She'd never been able to. But I couldn't believe that she had the audacity of admitting that she'd gone to Derek and told him she'd made a mistake, that she wanted to try again with him now that I was out of the picture. And guess what? He rejected her. Said he wasn't looking for anything serious and thought they were just having fun. Classic karma. She tried to spin this as some kind of revelation, that she'd finally gotten Derek out of her system and now could fully commit to me. Like I was supposed to be grateful to be her plan B. Again after plan A rejected her, again. The audacity of this woman never ceased to amaze me. I told her to leave, that we had nothing left to discuss except through our lawyers. She refused at first, saying she wouldn't go until I agreed to at least think about reconciliation. I had to threaten to call the police before she finally left, slamming the door so hard I thought it might break. I couldn't take a rest from their shit. One night I got a call from Amanda's sister Katie. We'd always gotten along pretty well, so I picked up. I know what she did, Katie said right away. I've known about Derek since college. I tried to tell her marrying you when she was still hung up on him was a mistake, but she wouldn't listen. Even her sister knew our marriage was built on lies. Katie apologized for not warning me somehow. Said she thought Amanda would eventually get over Derek and grow to love me the way I deserved. She did love you, Katie insisted. Just not in the way you needed. Not in the way a marriage needs. Small comfort that. But at least Katie was being honest, which was more than I could say for Amanda. The lawyer suggested mediation instead of a drawn-out court battle. Said if we could agree on the division of assets, we could be divorced in a matter of months rather than a year or more. I agreed immediately. I didn't even care about getting my fair share anymore. The house, the furniture, most of our savings, she could have it all if it meant getting free faster. When my lawyer contacted Amanda with the proposal, she initially refused. Said she wouldn't participate in anything designed to end our marriage, that she wanted counseling, not mediation. But when my lawyer made it clear this was happening with or without her cooperation, and that a court battle would only make everything more public and messy, she finally agreed. It's been 6 months since everything fell apart. Divorce was finalized last week. I let her keep the house, split savings 60-40 her way. My lawyer thought I was an idiot, but I just wanted out. Signing those papers felt surreal. 4 years of my life ended with a few signatures. Amanda cried. I felt nothing. Just empty. Guess that's progress. We talked after. She apologized again. Said therapy was helping her see how she'd always made decisions based on other people's expectations. And guess what? Derek got fired for sexual harassment. Turns out I wasn't the only guy whose wife he was messing with. She asked if we could be friends someday. I told her no. You can't build a friendship on lies any more than you can build a marriage on them. As for me, things are looking up. Wasn't interested in dating for months. Then I met Megan, an architect who works with my company. We got into an argument about some design specs on a job site and somehow ended up getting coffee. She's different from Amanda in every way. Direct, honest, says what she means. When she likes something, you know it. When she doesn't, she tells you straight up. We've only been on a few dates. Taking it super slow. But for the first time in forever, I'm excited about something real. Something based on actual attraction, not convenience. I told Megan everything. Thought it might scare her off, but she just squeezed my hand and said, her loss. Big time. No drama, no pity. Found out Amanda's selling the house and moving to Chicago. The whole Derek situation exploded at her company. Can't say I'm sorry she'll be in another city. Sometimes I still get angry thinking about the years I wasted. But mostly I'm grateful I found out before we had kids or wasted more time. In some weird way, I'm almost thankful. Finding out the truth showed me what I don't want, which made it clearer what I do want. Someone who chooses me first, not as a backup. Don't know what'll happen with Megan. Maybe it works, maybe not. But I'll never settle for being someone's second choice again. Life's too short for that. Thanks to everyone who shared similar stories. Helped knowing I wasn't alone. And to those who said I was too nice in the divorce, maybe, but I sleep fine knowing I took the high road. So that's it. I'm moving forward. And for the first time in years, I'm actually excited about what's next. Not the life I planned, but maybe something better. Something real. Story 4. My fiancé texted, I'm having your friend's baby. He's going to be a father. Then blamed me, saying, all men get obsessive around me, and I set her up to fail. Says I owe her support because her cheating is my fault. I canceled the wedding, packed her stuff, and dismantled both their lives. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Alright, so I, 33 male, need to get this off my chest, because at this point, the only one I trust anymore is my dog Vesper. Picked him up from the shelter right after my fiance and my best friend
gifted me a double betrayal wrapped in a pregnancy test. Vesper's solid. Loyal, no lies, no pretending, no side missions behind my back. Just tail wags and real ones only. But before I tell you how he became my shadow, let me walk you through how I systematically dismantled the lives of the two people who thought they could ruin mine. I work at this logistics firm, been there about 8 years now. Good job, decent pay, but the hours can be brutal. I'd been pulling doubles and extra shifts for months to save up for this wedding that my fiancée Jaslyn, 28 female, had been planning since we got engaged. She hasn't worked since COVID hit, claimed she was focusing on healing, and that getting a job would distract from the wedding vision. Whatever. I loved her, so I busted my ass 60 plus hours a week so she could have her dream venue and all that shit. We lived in this decent apartment, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, in a complex that was built in the 90s. The place had its issues. The dishwasher made this weird grinding noise. The neighbors above us apparently practiced river dancing at 2 a.m., and the maintenance guys took their sweet time fixing anything. But it was affordable, close to my work, and Jaslyn had decorated it with all this stuff from Target and Home Goods to make it feel cozy. She was good at that kind of thing. I'll give her that. Then summer rolled around. And not just any summer. The worst freaking heat wave I can remember. Day after day of 100+ degree weather. Our AC unit was old, probably original to the building, and it had been making this concerning rattle for months. I kept meaning to call maintenance about it, but between the extra shifts and Jaslyn's constant wedding planning, it slipped my mind. Until it finally gave up the ghost. Died completely. One minute it was pumping out lukewarm air. The next, nothing. Just this sad little click and silence. Our apartment turned into a literal oven within hours. Sweat was dripping down the walls. It was so hot our plants were wilting, and the chocolate bars in the pantry straight up melted. Even opening all the windows didn't help, because there was no breeze, just hot, stagnant air. Jaslyn was miserable. She kept taking cold showers and laying on the kitchen floor, because the tiles were slightly cooler. I wasn't much better off. Coming home after a 12-hour shift in a warehouse with spotty AC to an apartment that was pushing 95 degrees inside was torture. I called maintenance immediately, but they were swamped with similar calls all across the complex. Sorry, man, AC units are dropping like flies in this heat. We'll get to you as soon as we can, the guy told me. 2 days later, the HVAC dude finally shows up, takes one look at our unit and says, yeah, cooling coil is completely shot. Part's gonna take 5 to 7 days minimum to come in. Amazing. That night, I'm bitching about it to my buddy Tyler, 34 male, over text. I've known this guy since college. Always thought he was solid. We played intramural sports together. He was my roommate junior and senior year. He was the best man at my brother's wedding. That kind of thing. He usually hosted our fantasy football drafts, and we'd grab beers and wings to watch games most Sundays during the season. Tyler had done well for himself, got into tech sales right out of college, married his girlfriend Rachel early on, bought a nice house in the suburbs. Rachel's a pediatric nurse, super sweet lady, always bringing homemade cookies to gatherings and asking about everyone's families. I always thought they had a good marriage, but I guess you never really know people, right? So I'm texting Tyler about our AC nightmare, and he calls me right away. Bro, you guys can crash at my place till it's fixed. Got central air, guest rooms all set up. Rachel's visiting her folks in Michigan for the week anyway. Some family reunion thing. I wasn't feeling it. I hate imposing on people. Makes me feel like a mooch. Plus, Tyler and I were close, but we'd never been stay at each other's houses for a week. Close, you know? Thanks, man, but we can probably just get a cheap hotel or something. In this heat, every hotel in the city is booked solid with people in the same situation. Seriously, the guest room is just sitting empty. Rachel already made up the bed before she left because her sister was supposed to visit, but she canceled. It's all ready to go. I was still hesitant, but when I mentioned it to Jaslyn, she was all over it. Tyler's house? With the pool and the big kitchen? Hell yes. It'll be fun. Like a little vacation. Plus, you can actually sleep between your shifts instead of lying in a puddle of your own sweat. She had a point. I was already exhausted from the overtime, and the thought of trying to sleep in 90+ degree heat for a week wasn't exactly appealing. Plus, hotel rates were through the roof with the heat wave. So we packed some bags and headed over. Tyler's place was nice. 2-story house with a finished basement, central air blasting. Heaven compared to our apartment. He showed us to the guest room. King-size bed, attached bathroom, the works. Mi casa es su casa, Tyler said, giving us the grand tour. Fridge is stocked. Help yourselves to anything. Wi-Fi password is on the fridge. Stay as long as you need. Looking back, I should have noticed how eager he was.
There were signs, man. Little things. The way he kept emphasizing that Rachel was gone for the whole week. How he'd cleaned the house spotlessly before we arrived. The new sheets on the guest bed. But I was too tired, too trusting. The first couple days were normal enough. I'd leave for work at like 5 a.m., get home around 8 or 9 at night. Jaslyn and Tyler would usually be in the living room watching some show or just chatting. Nothing seemed off. Tyler was bringing home takeout for them. Jaslyn was helping keep the place clean. Seemed like a decent arrangement. Tyler had this huge smart TV in the living room, with every streaming service known to man. Jaslyn was in heaven. At our place, we just had basic cable and Netflix. She kept talking about all the shows she was catching up on. Tyler showed me this awesome series on HBO, she'd say. Or Tyler and I started watching this documentary about cults. Always Tyler this, Tyler that. I didn't think much of it at the time. They were stuck in the house together all day. Of course, they'd be watching TV. Jaslyn also seemed really into using Tyler's kitchen. She was never much of a cook at our place. We mostly did takeout or simple stuff like pasta. But suddenly she was experimenting with all these recipes. Tyler showed me how to make his mom's famous lasagna, she'd tell me proudly. Again, didn't think much of it. Just glad they were getting along and she wasn't bored. By day 3, though, I noticed something weird. Tyler suddenly became the world's biggest homebody. This dude used to hit the gym every morning without fail, played in a weekend soccer league, always had shit going on. He was constantly posting on Instagram from restaurants, bars, the golf course, but now he's working from home every single day, never leaving the house, not even to grab the mail. I thought it was strange, but figured maybe he was just being a good host or something. Didn't want to leave Jaslyn alone in his house all day. Made sense, right? There were other things too. Small stuff. The way Jaslyn would always be freshly showered when I got home. How Tyler would sometimes be awkward around me. Overly friendly one minute, then distant the next. How they had all these inside jokes after just a few days. I did notice Jaslyn was dressing differently at Tyler's house. At home, she usually lounged around in sweats and one of my old t-shirts. But at his place, she was always in these little shorts and tank tops. "It's hot out," she'd say if I mentioned it. Yeah, it was hot. But his house was like 68 degrees with the AC blasting. By day 4, I was itching to get out of there. Couldn't really explain it. Just had this low-key pressure in my chest, like we were overstaying our welcome or throwing off the vibe. Also, something was nagging me to get out. I wasn't comfortable. I called the HVAC company twice that day, practically begging them to move us up the list. I told Jaslyn it was just me hating to impose. But truth was, my gut had already started whispering. Each time I call, they say, "Still waiting on the supplier, sir. Heat waves got everyone backed up." Meanwhile, I was working those doubles with a purpose. Jaslyn had her heart set on this reception venue that needed a $5,000 deposit. One of those converted industrial spaces downtown, with exposed brick and those hanging Edison bulbs everywhere. Very Instagram-worthy. Very expensive. I was gonna surprise her with it. Had it all planned out. Would take her to dinner at this Italian place she liked, tell her I secured the venue, show her the receipt. I imagined how excited she'd be, how she'd probably cry and make a scene in the restaurant, maybe post about it on social media with a million heart emojis. By the end of the week, we finally got word from the HVAC guy that our apartment was good to go. New cooling coil installed, system recharged, AC blasting beautiful cold air again. We packed up our stuff, and as we were leaving, Jaslyn gave Tyler this long hug, like way too long for a thanks for the hospitality kind of thing. It just felt off. On the drive home, I asked her straight up, "What was that about?" That hug was a bit much. She laughed it off and said, "He was just being nice. He let us stay. Don't be weird about it." I let it go. Tried to. I even gave the guy a limited edition watch I'd been holding onto something meaningful just to say thank you. Told him I appreciated the help. Anyways, life went back to normal. Or what I thought was normal. Jaslyn seemed a bit distant, but I figured she was just coming down from a week of vacation vibes back to our regular apartment. She kept texting a lot, but that wasn't unusual for her. Always on social media, always chatting with friends. Then she started to take a lot of shopping trips with her girlfriends, coming home with surprisingly few bags for someone who'd been out for hours. Again, didn't think too much about it. I was still working my ass off, finally got that deposit money together, was going to surprise her that weekend, had the whole thing planned. Reservation at Vincenzo's for Saturday night, would dress up nice, bring her flowers, the whole 9 yards. Then I'd give her an envelope with the venue confirmation and deposit receipt. It was going to be perfect. Then one random Tuesday, I'm at work unloading a truck in the warehouse, and my phone buzzes. I don't usually check it during shifts,
but we were almost done with the truck, and it could have been the boss with another assignment. So I pulled it out. Text from Jaslyn. I'm pregnant. It's not yours. 5 words that destroyed everything I thought I knew. I stared at my phone like it was glitching or something. Read it again and again. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. My coworker Miguel noticed something was wrong. You okay, man? You look like you seen a ghost. I couldn't even speak. Just showed him my phone. Damn, he whispered. Dude, you gotta go home. I'll cover for you. I called Jaslyn. Straight to voicemail. Texted back, what the hell does that mean? Her response, come home. We need to talk. Told my supervisor I had an emergency and bounced. Miguel, solid dude that he is, offered to finish my shift. I owe that guy a beer someday. The drive home was a blur. Hands shaking on the wheel the whole time. My mind was racing through possibilities. Who? When? How? I had that stupid naive thought that maybe there was some explanation, some misunderstanding. Maybe she was joking, some sick prank. Deep down, though, I already knew. Tyler. It had to be. All those little weird moments suddenly made sense. I walked in and found Jaslyn on the couch, already crying before I even said a word. Her eyes were puffy and red, mascara running down her face. She looked like shit. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whimpered. Tyler. He forced himself on me. I didn't know how to tell you. You're the one who brought us there. She said it like it was a defense. Like I should have expected this. Like she wasn't the one who betrayed. You know how guys are around me, she continued, straightening up like she was about to deliver some universal truth. They get weird, obsessive, weak. You knew your friend always had a thing for me. You saw it. You brought me into his house and left me there all day, every day. What did you expect to happen? That was it. That was the moment it clicked. She wasn't confessing. She was blaming me. For her affair. For the pregnancy. For everything. In our friend's house? While I was busting my ass working doubles to pay for her dream wedding? And by the way, I've never seen Tyler interested in her. He was literally married. You seriously think that's a valid excuse? I said, dead calm. That you're just so stunning, so dangerously irresistible, that any man within 100 feet just turns into a drooling caveman? What are you, Angelina Jolie's please? Her eyes didn't even flinch. She believed it. Every word. You basically set me up, she said, like I handed her a loaded gun and dared her to pull the trigger. You knew how he looked at me. You just didn't want to admit it. I let out the smallest laugh. Cold, sharp. Right. So you being faithful wasn't your job. It was mine. Got it. I should have scheduled your loyalty between my double shifts, right? I stared at her for a second, the weight of it all sinking in, then said, when? Because at that point, I didn't need another excuse. I needed the timeline. I needed to know how far back the rot went, how long I'd been sleeping next to a stranger. It happened the second day we were there, she said, still crying. You were at work. He came onto me so strong. I was scared. Something about her story wasn't adding up. If it happened the second day and she was already confirming a pregnancy, the timing was off. Way off. It takes at least a couple weeks to know you're pregnant, and we'd only been back from Tyler's for like 10 days. So you're saying you knew back at Tyler's house? And you didn't tell me then? She stuttered. I wasn't sure then. I just took a test today. Bullshit. Complete freaking bullshit. I didn't say anything. Just stared at her, watching her squirm, watching her lie fall apart. I'm going to ask you one time, I said, my voice scarily calm even to my own ears. Is Tyler the only one? Her eyes widened. What? Yes! It was just that one time, I swear. More lies. I could feel it. But honestly, did it even matter at that point? 1 time, 10 times, whatever. She'd slept with my friend and was now pregnant with his kid, trying to blame me for it. You're saying he forced himself on you? I asked. That's a serious accusation. She hesitated just a fraction of a second. Well, he was really aggressive, and I didn't want to upset him since we were staying in his house. Her story was already changing. First it was forced, now it was aggressive. Red flags everywhere. So you're saying my friend of over 10 years, who's never had so much as a parking ticket, SA'd you, and your response was to continue staying in his house? To watch TV with him every night? To cook with him and laugh with him? She buried her face in her hands. You don't understand. It's complicated. No, it's actually very simple, I said. You're lying. Her head snapped up. I'm not. Why would I lie about this? Because the truth is even worse. You weren't assaulted. You had an affair. And now you're pregnant, and you're trying to make it my fault somehow. She started sobbing harder. That's not true. I love you. Why would I throw everything away for Tyler? That's what I'd like to know. She kept sobbing. I didn't yell. Didn't throw shit. I just walked out of the apartment and sat in my car for like 2 hours. Then I started calling vendors, canceling everything for the wedding. Deposits be damned. There wasn't going to be a wedding anymore. First, the venue. I'm sorry to inform you we won't be needing the space after all. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, sir. May I ask the reason for cancellation? Change of plans. Understatement of the century. Then the caterer, the photographer, the DJ, the florist. One by one, systematically undoing all the plans we'd made. Some of them had cancellation fees. I didn't care. The money was gone either way. And at least this way I wouldn't have to see their services being used for a wedding that was built on lies. The whole time I was making these calls, Jaslyn was blowing up my phone with texts and calls. I ignored all of them, turned my phone on silent, and kept going down the list. When I finally went back inside, Jaslyn was still on the couch, like she hadn't moved. Her makeup was completely ruined now, black streaks down her face. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She looked up at me with this weird, hopeful expression, like maybe I'd forgiven her. Like maybe I'd decided to raise my friend's kid and pretend everything was fine. I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight, I said. You should figure out where you're going to live. What? She gasped. You're kicking me out? Dylan, please, we can work through this. There's no we anymore. There's you, there's your baby, and there's Tyler. I'm out. But I love you, she wailed. It was a mistake. Tyler took advantage of me. I just looked at her. Pack your stuff. I want you gone by the weekend. You can't do this. We're engaged. This is my home, too. Actually, it's not. Your name isn't on the lease. You don't pay rent. You're essentially a guest here, and I'm telling you it's time to leave. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have any money. And whose fault was that? She'd been perfectly capable of working for the past 2 years but chose not to. Now that was my problem somehow? I suggest you call your parents, or one of your friends. Or hey, maybe Tyler will take you in. He seems to like having you around. She started crying again. You're being so cruel. This isn't like you. You're right. It's not like me. But finding out my fiancé cheated on me with my friend and is now pregnant with his kid isn't like you either. Or at least, I didn't think it was. Guess we were both wrong about each other. I grabbed some clothes, my laptop, and my toiletries and headed for the door. Don't change the locks while I'm gone, I warned her. I'll be back tomorrow to check on things. So that's it? She sobbed. You're just throwing away 3 years over one mistake? I turned back to look at her. Hell yeah. Then I left, spent the night in a Holiday Inn, couldn't sleep much, kept replaying everything in my head, looking for signs I might have missed. There were plenty, now that I knew what to look for. The freshly showered thing, the inside jokes, the whispering in the kitchen, all of it pointed to one thing, and I'd been too blind to see it. The next day, after a shitty night in that cheap hotel, I confronted Tyler. Caught him coming out of his house as I was waiting in my car across the street. Walked right up to him, calm as hell. Jaslyn's pregnant. She says it's yours, congratulations. His face did this weird thing. Not shock, not shame, just annoyance. Like I'd interrupted his day with some bullshit. You needed a place to stay, and I let you crash at my house. And now you're throwing this at me? Seriously? Zero shame. Did you force yourself on her? I asked, already knowing the answer deep down. He scoffed. Is that what she told you? Man, you should ask yourself why she'd make up such crazy shit. So you're denying you slept with her? I dot. For the first time, he seemed at a loss for words. Look, she came on to me, all right? What was I supposed to do? I don't know, Tyler. Maybe not fudge your friend's fiancé? Maybe that. It wasn't like that. We were just hanging out, watching a movie. She was wearing those little shorts she always wears, sitting real close to me. One thing led to another. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to punch him in his stupid face. One thing led to another? That's your excuse? You don't accidentally fall into your best friend's fiancé. Keep your voice down, he hissed, looking around at the neighbors' houses. Look, I'm sorry, okay? It was a mistake, but she's making it sound like I'm some kind of predator, and that's bullshit. She was all over me the whole week you guys stayed here. The whole week, huh? Not just one time like she claimed? Tyler's eyes widened slightly, realized he'd said too much. I just meant, flirting and stuff. Save it. You're dead to me. I walked away before I did something that would land me in jail. Went home and started packing Jaslyn's stuff into boxes. All her clothes, her makeup, her books, her little decorative pillows and candles and all that crap. I wasn't rough with her things, didn't break anything or throw stuff around. Just methodically packed everything that was hers and stacked the boxes by the front door. Sent her a text.
Your belongings will be on the porch Saturday. You have 1 hour. After that, I'm done. The response was immediate. First begging, please don't do this. I love you. We can work through this. Then blaming. This is so unfair. You're punishing me for one mistake when Tyler is equally responsible. Then threatening. I'll call the police if you put my stuff outside. You can't just throw me out. Then playing victim again. I have nowhere to go. I have no money. What am I supposed to do? I blocked her number and continued packing. When Saturday came, I put her boxes on the porch, then went to a coffee shop down the street. Didn't want to see her. Didn't want another confrontation, another round of tears and accusations. When I came back, the boxes were gone. She'd left her key in the mailbox. At least she had that much decency. That night, I changed the locks anyway, just in case. Then I threw myself onto the couch, lights off, no TV, just silence. And it hit me harder than I expected. It didn't feel like justice. It felt like standing in the middle of wreckage I didn't cause, wondering where to even start. I kept replaying everything. Every glance, every joke, that hug. My head was spinning with questions. How did I miss it? How long had it been going on? And yeah, I started blaming myself. Maybe if I hadn't taken Tyler up on his offer. Maybe if I'd just stuck it out in that oven of an apartment. Maybe none of this would have happened. Then, exactly 1 week later, I got a call from Rachel, Tyler's wife. Hadn't talked to her since before all this went down. I found the messages, she said, voice flat. Screenshots, pictures. She wasn't forced. It was mutual. They've been texting since the third day you stayed here. My stomach dropped. Not because I was surprised, but because having my suspicions confirmed still hurt like a slap. Rachel kept talking. They were planning meetups, times when you'd be at work. She sent him pictures from your bathroom while you were sleeping. I felt sick, physically sick, had to sit down. When did it start? The actual, you know, Rachel's voice was hollow. From what I can gather from the texts, the second night you were there, after you fell asleep on the couch. Tyler carried you to the guest room, and then, yeah. So while I was passed out from exhaustion, working overtime to pay for our wedding, my fiancé was sleeping with my friend in his house, probably giggling about how deep I was sleeping. How did you find out? I asked. He's been acting weird since you guys stayed here. Distant, checking his phone all the time. I had a feeling something was up, so I checked his iPad. All his texts synced to it. That's where I found everything. I'm sorry, Rachel. Not your fault, she said. You got screwed over as much as I did. I'm filing for divorce, she continued. Might sue for marital misconduct, too. Just thought you should know the truth. I thanked her and hung up. That night, something changed in me. The numbness wore off, and this cold, calculating anger took its place. They'd destroyed my life, my trust, my future. And for what? A few cheap thrills? Well, they were going to pay for it. Both of them. I started with information gathering. Rachel was a goldmine. She was hurt and angry, and more than willing to help me expose Tyler's bullshit. She forwarded me all the screenshots of their texts, the pictures Jaslyn had sent him, everything. It was disgusting to see, but necessary for what I had planned. The texts were eye-opening. Not just the explicit stuff, but the casual way they talked about deceiving me. The inside jokes about how oblivious I was. How Jaslyn complained about me working too much while simultaneously spending the money I earned. How Tyler promised to take care of her once they figured out how to break the news to me and Rachel. They had actually been plotting to tell us after the wedding. Let me pay for this huge celebration, then drop the bomb that she was leaving me for Tyler. The pregnancy just accelerated their timeline, forced their hand. Tyler worked at this tech startup. Fancy place with a reputation-first culture? Very image-conscious. I knew his boss, had met him at a company party once. Nice guy, family man, conservative type. I set up a new email address and carefully composed a message to Tyler's boss. Attached were select screenshots of Tyler's texts with Jaslyn, specifically ones where he was bragging about cheating on his wife with his friend's fiancé. I made sure to only include messages sent during work hours, showing he was working from home, but actually planning hookups. I believe your company values would not align with this kind of behavior, I wrote. I thought you should be aware of the character of the man representing your organization. Sent. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was more direct. Thanks to Rachel, I knew Tyler had been hiding money from her. Had a separate bank account she didn't know about, was planning to use it to buy a vintage Porsche without telling her. Shady shit that would look real bad in divorce proceedings. Rachel's lawyer was very interested in this information. I connected them, provided everything I knew. That secret account suddenly became Exhibit A in their divorce case. For Jaslyn, my approach was different. I didn't want to destroy her life. She was doing a fine job of that herself. I just wanted her gone from mine. But there was one loose end. Our shared friends. I knew Jaslyn well enough to know she'd be spinning some bullshit story, now that the wedding is canceled, about how I kicked her out when she was vulnerable, how I abandoned her when she got pregnant. I couldn't let that stand. So I created a private group chat with our 6 closest mutual friends. No dramatic accusations, just facts. Hey guys, I know Jaslyn has probably reached out to some of you. Before you hear only her side, I thought you should know what actually happened. I laid it all out. The texts, the timeline, the pregnancy, the lies about being forced, the truth from Rachel. I didn't ask them to pick sides. Didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. Within days, I heard through the grapevine that Jaslyn was complaining about how everyone abandoned her. Good. Actions have consequences. But I wasn't done with Tyler yet. Not by a long shot. 2 weeks after I sent that email to Tyler's boss, Rachel called me. Tyler got put on probation at work, she said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Something about conduct unbecoming and misuse of work-from-home privileges. I pretended to be surprised. Really? That's interesting timing. Yeah, he's freaking out. Thinks I had something to do with it. Meanwhile, Jaslyn's little plan had backfired spectacularly. Tyler wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. Wouldn't return her calls, blocked her everywhere. Turns out he wasn't interested in playing daddy. Big surprise. I found out through our mutual friend group that she was now frantically backpedaling, telling people maybe the baby was mine after all, trying to get back in touch with me. Too little, too late. Tyler's problems were just beginning. His work probation meant he couldn't work from home anymore. Had to be in the office 9 to 5 every day, closely monitored. His side hustle, some drop shipping business he ran during work hours, was now impossible to maintain. I heard his income took a serious hit. Then came the divorce proceedings. Rachel's lawyer was brutal, using the evidence of infidelity and the hidden bank account to go after everything. Tyler was looking at losing the house, half his retirement, and paying significant alimony. But I still wasn't satisfied. This guy had been my friend for years. I'd trusted him. And he fucked my fiancée in his house while I was working to pay for a wedding that would never happen. He deserved more than just a divorce and work probation. So I went nuclear. He had this dream of opening his own business someday. Had been talking about it for years. A sports bar with a unique concept. All the tables would have built-in beer taps where you could pour your own drinks and get charged by the ounce. He'd even secured some preliminary investors, was in the process of finding a location. Those investors? One of them was my cousin's husband. Small world, huh? So I made sure my cousin's husband got an anonymous email with all the details of Tyler's character. How he cheated on his wife with his friend's fiancée. How he lied and manipulated. How untrustworthy he was. Would you really want to go into business with someone like this? The email concluded. The investment group pulled out a week later. Tyler's dream? Dead in the water. Throughout all this, I maintained radio silence with both of them. Blocked them everywhere. Focused on rebuilding my life. I started hitting the gym regularly. Adopted a rescue dog from the shelter. A big, goofy lab mix named Vesper, who quickly became my best buddy. Rachel would call me sometimes with updates, like we were part of some survivors club or something. She's couch surfing at her friend Amber's place, Rachel told me. Working part-time at a vape shop. She tried to get child support started, but Tyler demanded a paternity test. I mostly just listened. Felt detached from it all now. Like I was hearing about characters in a TV show, not people who had once been central to my life. Tyler had to move into a studio apartment, Rachel said in another call. He's telling everyone I screwed him over in the divorce, playing the victim. Meanwhile, he can't even get a date. Word got around about what he did. I wasn't surprised. Our social circle wasn't huge. Actions have consequences. Eventually, I started distancing myself from Rachel too. Her updates, while initially satisfying, were keeping me tethered to a past I wanted to forget. I needed a clean break from all of it. The divorce was going through, Tyler was getting what he deserved, and Jaslyn was facing the consequences of her actions. My work was done. The wedding fund I'd been saving, used it to pay off my car, upgrade the HVAC system in my apartment with top-of-the-line stuff, ironic, I know, and booked a solo trip to Iceland. Always wanted to see those northern lights. Figure I deserved a real vacation after all this bullshit. Vesper the dog turned out to be the best decision I'd made in years. Loyal, affectionate, always happy to see me when I got home from work. Never judging, never lying, never sneaking around behind my back. Just pure, simple companionship. We'd go on these long hikes on weekends, explore new trails, camp out under the stars.
The kind of stuff I'd always wanted to do, but Jaslyn was never into. Too many bugs, she'd say. Not enough bathrooms. About 3 months after everything blew up, I ran into Jaslyn at the grocery store. I turned the corner near the produce section, and there she was, squinting at avocados like one of them owed her money. She looked like hell. Sweats, messy bun, dark circles under her eyes, and a baby bump she couldn't guilt her way out of. She spotted me and lit up like a damn puppy. "Dylan," she said, all breathless, like I was some long-lost savior. I didn't even slow down. "I've been trying to reach you," she blurted, grabbing my arm. I didn't flinch. "I blocked you for a reason." That should have been the end, but she launched into full desperation mode. Tyler abandoned her. She had no one. She was sorry. She loved me. Blah, blah. She even tried the old, "maybe the baby is yours, Hail Mary." I actually laughed in her face. "You told me it wasn't. Timing makes it impossible, but good try." Her eyes welled up like that would change something. "It was a mistake," she said, and I hit her with it cold. "No, what you did was a choice. A stack of them." Then I walked off and left my cart behind. Couldn't finish shopping next to the ghost of that much betrayal. Later that night, new number started texting me. It was her again. All caps rage. Blaming me for everything. Said I ruined her life, got Tyler fired, turned our friends against her. And you know what? She wasn't wrong. I did all that. On purpose. And I'd do it again twice as hard if given the chance. Last I heard, Tyler's unemployed and crashing in his parents' basement. Jaslyn's back in her hometown, working a vape shop counter with a kid Tyler won't even claim. They wrecked their own lives. I just made sure the wreckage was public. Now I live in peace with Vesper. Turns out, vengeance doesn't need fireworks. Sometimes it looks like silence. And a top-tier HVAC system. Story 5. My girlfriend insisted I meet her parents over dinner. She trashed me in Italian all night, thinking I wouldn't understand. "He's too stupid to even know," she laughed. After dinner, I thanked her parents in fluent Italian, then exposed every lie she'd told them. All right, Reddit. My girlfriend trashed me to her parents, thinking I couldn't understand. But I shocked her after dinner, exposing her lies in perfect Italian. She refused to leave my apartment, then escalated to theft and stalking with her friends. So I took my revenge. Here's what went down. My girlfriend, Isabella, 25 female, had been bugging me, 27 male, for months about meeting her parents. Not just asking, demanding, like it was some kind of divine right she was entitled to. Every conversation somehow turned into, "When are you meeting my family, Marco?" "Yeah, my name's Marco. Dad's American. Mom was from Bologna." More on that later. Isabella wasn't the type to ask nicely for anything. She was one of those girls who thought batting her eyelashes meant she deserved whatever she wanted. Designer bags, expensive dinners, weekend trips to Napa, all on my dime, obviously, because her job at some bullshit wellness startup barely covered her car payment. The red flags were there from day one, but I ignored them like an idiot. Like when she'd accidentally forget her wallet every single time we went out, or how she'd pout and give me the silent treatment if I suggested splitting a check. "Real men take care of their women," she'd say with this manipulative little smile. But the biggest red flag? She never asked about my family. In 3 years of dating, she knew my dad was American and my mom had died when I was 17. But that's where her curiosity ended. She was too busy talking about herself to give a shit about my background. The manipulation ramped up when she realized direct pressure wasn't working. She started mentioning other couples where the guy had already met the parents. "Jessica's boyfriend proposed after meeting her family," she'd hint. "They said meeting the parents showed he was committed." Here's what I didn't know. I wasn't walking into a nice family dinner. I was walking into a roast, and I was the main course. But Isabella didn't know something either. My mom wasn't just from Italy. She was born in Bologna, raised speaking Italian before English, and taught me the language from day one. After she died when I was 17, speaking Italian felt like reopening a wound, so I just stopped, packed it away. My last name's O'Brien. I look like I stepped out of a country club catalog, and in 3 years of dating, Isabella never once asked about my mom's background. That little detail was about to become very important. The dinner was set for Saturday night at her parents' place in some gated community where the HOA probably has rules about what color your garbage cans can be. I threw on a decent shirt, grabbed flowers for her mom, and picked up Isabella. She was nervous, which was weird, because Isabella's usually about as humble as a Kardashian. But that night she kept checking herself in the mirror and asking if I looked presentable enough. "They're going to love you," she kept saying. "Just be yourself, but maybe tone it down a little." Tone what down? I'm an architect, not a freaking circus performer. The car ride over should have been my warning. Isabella kept coaching me on what to talk about, what not to mention, how to act. Don't bring up work too much, she said. They think people who brag about their jobs are insecure. And don't mention your hobbies. They'll think you're immature. So basically, don't talk about anything that makes me who I am. Got it. What should I talk about then? I asked. Just let them lead the conversation. Answer their questions. Be charming. We pull up to this McMansion that screams, "We refinanced twice to afford this." Mr. Rossi answers the door, firm handshake, looking me up and down like he's calculating my net worth. Mrs. Rossi's behind him with this plastic smile that could cut glass. "You must be Marco," she says in English, but I catch her shooting Isabella this look that says, "Really? This is what you brought home?" The house was exactly what I expected. Oversized furniture, too many decorative pillows, and family photos everywhere showing Isabella at various stages of being spoiled rotten. Trophy case in the living room filled with participation awards from her childhood dance classes. We sat down in their formal dining room with the good china and cloth napkins. Everything's perfectly staged like they're expecting a magazine photographer to show up. And that's when the show started. Isabella immediately switches to rapid-fire Italian with her parents, turns to me with this fake-ass smile and goes, "We're just catching up. We'll switch back to English in a few minutes, I promise." Those few minutes turned into 2 hours. 2 hours of me sitting there like a houseplant while the woman I thought I loved spent the evening destroying my reputation in a language she thought was her secret weapon. I smiled. I nodded. I passed the bread. And I understood every single word. You know that feeling when you're watching someone dig their own grave and they keep asking for a bigger shovel? That was my life for 2 hours straight. It started with my career. Isabella tells her parents, "È bravo ma non ha vera ambizione. Si accontenta di essere un nobody in una piccola ditta. Sono io quella con la determinazione e la visione. Praticamente lo mantengo io perché il suo stipendio è, beh, patetico. He's fine, but he has no real ambition. He's content being a nobody at some small firm. I'm the one with drive and vision. I basically support us financially because his salary is, well, pathetic." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. I make $160,000 a year as a senior associate at one of the city's top architectural firms. Isabella makes maybe $45,000 selling overpriced supplements to suburban soccer moms. I've paid for every vacation, every fancy dinner, every designer purse she's ever owned, including the $12,000 trip to Greece last year, where she complained the entire time that our suite wasn't big enough. Her mom leaned in with this conspiratorial whisper. "But then why are you still with him?" Isabella shrugged with theatrical resignation. "He's convenient. He pays for everything, doesn't ask questions, and isn't smart enough to cause problems. Like having a well-trained dog." Then she moved on to my personality. "È noioso," she says with this dramatic sigh. "He's boring. No culture, no sophistication. He won't even try to learn Italian despite dating me for 3 years. It's like dating a golden retriever. Sweet, but not much going on upstairs. I literally have Dante's Inferno sitting on my nightstand in Italian. I've been reading Italian literature since high school. But hey, why would she know that? She'd never shown interest in anything about me that didn't involve her directly." Her father chimed in with his own observations. "He seems like the type who only watches sports and drinks. These Americans are all the same." Isabella nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly! He's so predictable. Every weekend is the same thing. Football, drinks, and video games. Like a teenager who never grew up. This was rich coming from someone whose idea of culture was reality TV, and whose hobbies included shopping and complaining about everything. But the real kicker came when her mom asked about marriage. And marriage? Has he ever made his intentions clear? "Oh, I'm ready to get married tomorrow." But he's terrified of commitment. I've been dropping hints for months and he just ignores them. I think he's keeping his options open, if you know what I mean. Fear. At that exact moment, I had an $8,000 custom engagement ring sitting in my bedroom safe. I'd been planning to propose on a surprise trip to Tuscany I'd already booked for her birthday. First-class tickets, 5-star hotel in Florence, the whole romantic movie bullshit. Sitting there listening to her call me a commitment phobe while I'm literally planning to propose in her ancestral homeland? That's some next-level cosmic freaking irony. The conversation kept spiraling. They dissected everything. My family, my future, my worth as a human being. All while I'm sitting there playing the role of the dumb American boyfriend who's too stupid to know he's being roasted alive. Mrs. Rossi got particularly vicious when the topic turned to my background. He doesn't even know where his family comes from. These Americans have no roots, no history. How can you build a future with someone who doesn't know who he is? Isabella nodded along like the dutiful daughter. Exactly, Mom. He's so empty. He has no depth, no passion for anything. It's like living with a mannequin. The worst part wasn't what she was saying. It was the casual cruelty of it. She'd look at me with these loving expressions while telling her parents I was basically a charity case she was considering dumping. I kept thinking about my mom during this whole shit show. How she taught me that Italian wasn't just a language. It was our connection to family, to history, to who we were. She'd read me bedtime stories in Italian, taught me to cook her nonna's recipes, made sure I understood where I came from. And here was Isabella, using that same language like a knife, turning something sacred into a weapon. But I held it together. I'm not the type to flip tables and storm out. I was raised better than that. I just sat there, cataloging every lie, every insult, every betrayal, waiting for the perfect moment to detonate this whole thing. That moment came during dessert. Her dad looks at me like I'm a particularly disappointing house pet and asks Isabella, Sei sicura di questo? Sembra semplice. Are you sure about this one? He seems simple. Isabella laughs and reaches over to pat my hand condescendingly. She looks me right in the eyes, like we're sharing some intimate moment, and says to her parents in Italian, Don't worry. He's too stupid to understand what we're saying. Look at him just sitting there with that blank smile. Like a trained seal. That was it. Game over. Every ounce of grief, rage, and betrayal crystallized into this cold, surgical clarity. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to wait for exactly the right moment, and then I was going to nuke her entire world. The perfect moment came as we were getting ready to leave. Her dad, probably feeling guilty about spending 2 hours talking shit about me to my face, pats my shoulder and speaks in slow, careful English like he's addressing a kindergartner. It was very nice meeting you, Marco. That's when I smiled, looked him straight in the eye, and let my mom's language flow out like silk. Il piacere è stato tutto mio, signor Rossi, I said in perfect, unaccented Italian. The pleasure was all mine, Mr. Rossi. You know that moment in action movies when the bomb timer hits 0 and everything goes silent right before the explosion? That's exactly what happened. Mrs. Rossi's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Mr. Rossi's jaw dropped so fast I thought he might dislocate something. And Isabella? Isabella went white as a ghost, then green around the edges. She looked like she was about to puke, faint, or spontaneously combust. Maybe all three at once. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I kept that polite smile and turned to her parents, still speaking fluent Italian. Prima di andarcene, vorrei chiarire alcuni piccoli malintesi della conversazione di stasera. Before we leave, I'd like to clear up a few small misunderstandings from this evening's conversation. The silence in that dining room was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in the next zip code. Isabella was frozen like a deer in headlights, probably running through every horrible thing she'd said and realizing I'd understood all of it. It was beautiful. What happened next was like watching a masterclass in surgical precision. I kept my voice calm and pleasant, like I was discussing the weather, while I systematically destroyed every lie Isabella had built her little performance on. First, the money situation. Isabella mentioned some concerns about my financial stability. I want to put your minds at ease about any confusion. I pulled out my phone and showed them the confirmation for the Tuscany trip. First-class tickets, suite at the Four Seasons in Florence, reservations at Michelin-starred restaurants. This is the surprise I was planning for her birthday. She mentioned supporting us financially? Simple misunderstanding, I'm sure. Isabella's face was getting whiter by the second. A single tear started rolling down her cheek, cutting a clean track through her foundation. She still couldn't move, couldn't speak, just sat there watching her world implode in real time. Next, the culture issue. She also mentioned my supposed lack of interest in Italian culture. This one particularly hurt. My mother, Francesca, was from Bologna. She raised me speaking her language. It was the language of my childhood, my heart. After she passed, it became too painful to speak. I kept it private because it was sacred to me. Mrs. Rossi's hand went to her chest, her expression completely changing from disgust to horror. Mr. Rossi stared at his daughter with this look of profound disappointment, like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. And finally, the killing blow. I looked directly at Isabella, and my voice went ice cold. You told your parents I was afraid of commitment, that I was stringing you along. You said this knowing I've spent the last 2 months working with a jeweler to design your engagement ring, knowing I was planning to propose to you in the hills of Tuscany next month. I let that hang in the air, watching it sink in. But I see now that a man cannot propose to a woman who thinks he's a stupid, worthless burden. A man cannot build a future with a woman who uses his dead mother's language
as a tool to mock him. I stood up from the table, turned to her parents one last time. Grazie per tutto. Avete una casa bellissima. Thank you for everything. You have a beautiful home. Then I walked out, got in my car, and drove away, leaving Isabella sitting in the wreckage of the life she'd just torched with her own mouth. The car ride home was dead silent. Isabella finally came out and got in, but she was in complete shock. When we got to our apartment, the dam broke. She exploded, accused me of setting her up, of deceiving her, of planning some elaborate trap. "You knew the whole time," she screamed. "You sat there and let me talk. You tricked me." "No, Isabella," I said, keeping my voice level. "I didn't do anything. I just existed. You hung yourself with your own words. The only thing I did was understand them." She started pacing around the living room like a caged animal, alternating between rage and panic. "This is insane. You deliberately hid this from me." "I didn't hide anything. You never asked. In 3 years, you never once asked about my mother's background, where she was from, what languages I spoke. You were too busy talking about yourself to care about my family." That hit home. She stopped pacing and stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. But you never what? Never volunteered information you never showed interest in hearing?" Then came the waterworks. The begging. The classic, "I didn't mean it. I was just nervous" bullshit. "There's no coming back from this," I told her. "You didn't just lie. You humiliated me using my mother's memory as entertainment. That's unforgivable." I walked into the bedroom and started packing her shit. "This is my apartment, my lease. I want you out by tomorrow." That's when she showed her true colors. The crying stopped immediately, replaced by this cold fury. "You can't just kick me out. I have rights. I live here too." "No," I said calmly. "You sleep here sometimes. There's a difference." She stared at me like she couldn't believe this was happening, like she thought she could cry her way out of it or threaten me into submission. But she'd crossed a line there was no coming back from. And that's when Isabella's real nightmare began. The next morning, Isabella refused to pack. Just sat on the couch in her pajamas, like she was staging some kind of occupation. "I'm not leaving," she announced. "This is my home too. You can't make me." That's when I called my childhood friend Jesse. We've known each other since we were 12, and he's got this gift for cutting through bullshit with surgical precision. "Need backup," I told him. "And maybe a place to crash for a few days while I deal with this." "Say less. I'll pack a bag." This sounds like entertainment. Jesse showed up an hour later with a duffel bag, 2 Starbucks cups, and this shit-eating grin. Took one look at Isabella camped out on my couch and said, "Oh, this is gonna be fun. So you're the girl who thinks Marco's too stupid to understand basic Italian? Bold strategy. How's that working out for you?" Isabella's eyes narrowed when she saw his bag. "What the hell is he doing here?" "He's staying here," I said calmly. "It's my apartment." "You can't just move someone in to intimidate me." Jesse laughed. "Intimidate you? Princess, I'm 5'8" and work in IT. If you feel intimidated by my presence, that says more about your guilty conscience than my intimidation factor." That's when Isabella tried her first power play. "Fine, I'll leave, but I want the engagement ring." I blinked at her. "What engagement ring?" "The one you bought me. You said you bought me a ring." "I said I bought a ring. Past tense. For a proposal that's never happening. That ring is going back to the jeweler." Jesse nearly choked on his coffee. "Holy shit, Princess. You actually think you're entitled to jewelry from the guy you just spent 2 hours roasting? That's some next-level delusion right there." Isabella's face went red. "I deserve compensation for 3 years of my life." "Compensation?" I laughed. "For what? The free vacations? The designer bags? The rent-free living? You want compensation for being financially supported while you played house?" Jesse was taking notes on his phone at this point. "This is gold. Please continue making demands you have no legal right to. I'm documenting everything." That's when she declared war. Instead of leaving, she dug in harder. "You know what? Fine, I'm not going anywhere. If you want me gone, you'll have to drag me out." Jesse looked at me with this deadpan expression. "Did she just refuse to leave your apartment while demanding compensation?" I believe she did. Fascinating. What followed was a week of psychological warfare. Isabella didn't just refuse to leave. She actively tried to make our lives miserable. She'd blast music at 3 a.m., leave dirty dishes everywhere, invite her toxic friends over without warning. The first night, she cranked some trashy pop playlist at maximum volume while Jesse and I were trying to sleep. When I knocked on the bedroom door to ask her to turn it down, she screamed through the door, "This is my home too. I can play music whenever I want." Jesse was a saint through all of it. When Isabella would start one of her screaming fits,
He'd just put in earbuds and ignore her. When she'd leave passive-aggressive notes around the apartment, he'd write responses. Her note: some people need to learn respect and basic human decency. Jesse's response: some people need to learn that Italian isn't a secret code and that actions have consequences. Also, you're out of toilet paper. The passive-aggressive warfare escalated daily. Isabella would use all the hot water before I needed to shower. Jesse responded by waking up at 5 a.m. to shower first, then loudly making coffee while she was trying to sleep in. She'd eat my food and claim she forgot it wasn't hers. Jesse started labeling everything in the fridge with detailed ownership notices. Marco's lunch: do not eat unless you want to pay for takeout replacement. The labeling became an art form. Jesse would write things like, Isabella's yogurt. Oh wait, Isabella doesn't buy groceries. This is Marco's yogurt. Hands off, klepto. Or my personal favorite: this sandwich belongs to the guy who pays rent here. But Jesse's real genius was in how he handled her manipulation attempts. Every time she'd try to guilt trip me or play the victim, he'd provide running commentary like a nature documentary narrator. And here we see the entitled princess in her natural habitat. He'd say in a David Attenborough voice, while Isabella was mid-tantrum, notice how she fluffs her feathers and squawks loudly when denied access to resources she believes she owns by divine right. Isabella would turn red every time he did this. Stop talking about me like I'm not here, she'd shriek. Jesse would respond without missing a beat. The common Princess Sapien becomes increasingly agitated when her behavior patterns are observed and documented. Fascinating. The real entertainment came when Isabella's friends started showing up for moral support. Brittany and Chloe, both cut from the same entitled princess cloth, would camp out in my living room like they were staging an intervention. Day 3 brought the full cavalry. I came home from work to find all 3 of them arranged on my couch like they were holding court. They'd apparently been there for hours, eating my food and plotting their next move. You can't just kick Isabella out, Brittany announced. She has nowhere to go. Jesse, who was making himself a sandwich in the kitchen, called over. She has parents. She has friends. She has options. What she doesn't have is the legal right to squat in someone else's apartment. This is emotional abuse, Chloe shrieked. No, Jesse said calmly. Emotional abuse is what Isabella did at that dinner. This is just consequences. But I understand the confusion. Chloe stood up dramatically, pointing an accusatory finger at me. You're destroying her life over a stupid misunderstanding. Jesse looked up from his sandwich. A misunderstanding? She called him a trained seal, in Italian, while laughing, for 2 hours. Isabella started ramping up the harassment. She'd accidentally walk in on me showering. She'd move my stuff around and then claim she didn't know where it went. She'd order food to the apartment and stick me with the bill. The food delivery scam was her most pathetic move. She'd order $40 worth of Thai food, then disappear when it arrived, leaving me to deal with the confused delivery guy. Jesse started intercepting the delivery drivers. If Isabella ordered it, she can pay for it herself. If she's not here with cash, take it back. He had her number from day one. Every time she'd try some bullshit, he'd call it out with surgical precision. Oh, look, he'd say when she'd start fake crying. The waterworks are back. It's like clockwork. Every time someone calls her out on her behavior, here come the tears. By day 5, Isabella was getting desperate. She couldn't handle Jesse's constant dry commentary on her behavior. Every manipulation tactic she tried was immediately exposed and mocked. Why do you hate me so much? She asked Jesse during one particularly pathetic breakdown. I never did anything to you. Oh, I don't hate you, Isabella. I just have zero tolerance for bullshit, and you're basically a walking bullshit factory. It's nothing personal. You know what your problem is? Jesse told her during one of her meltdowns. You're used to people who enable your bullshit. Marco was too nice to call you out. Your parents spoiled you rotten, and your friends are just as delusional as you are. But I don't give a shit about your feelings, so I'm just going to keep pointing out reality. That's when Isabella made her biggest mistake. On day 7, while Jesse and I were at work, she packed up her shit and left. But she didn't just take her stuff, she took mine too. I came home from work to find half my shit missing. Isabella had cleaned me out like a freaking burglar. My iPad, my expensive headphones, 2 of my watches, some designer clothes, and, this one really pissed me off, my mom's jewelry box that she'd somehow found in my closet. Jesse took one look at the empty spaces and whistled. Damn, girl went full klepto on you. I was documenting everything for the police report when Isabella's text came through. I took what I deserved. Consider it compensation for 3 years of emotional labor. Jesse read it over my shoulder. Emotional labor? Is that what we're calling being a crazy girlfriend now?
Apparently, stealing constitutes payment for imaginary services. Should we tell her that's not how employment law works? Or should we let her explain that theory to the police? But the theft was just the beginning. Isabella and her toxic brigade were just getting started. The harassment campaign that followed was relentless. They'd show up at my gym, my coffee shop, my office building, not just asking for stuff back, actively trying to humiliate me in public. The gym incident was particularly embarrassing. I was mid-workout when all three of them showed up, marching through the weight section like they owned the place. Other gym members started staring as Isabella began her performance. There he is! The guy who kicked me out with nowhere to go. Brittany cornered me outside my office building during lunch. You need to drop this whole victim act, she said loud enough for people to hear. Isabella only took what was rightfully hers. Rightfully hers? I laughed. My dead mother's jewelry was rightfully hers? That stumped her for about 2 seconds before Chloe jumped in. You manipulated her for years. You owe her. Jesse, who'd come to meet me for lunch, walked up just in time to hear this. Oh good, the flying monkeys are back. Ladies, quick question. In what universe does emotional disappointment justify theft? I'm genuinely curious about the theory here. Shut up, Brittany snapped. This has nothing to do with you. Actually, it has everything to do with me. I'm the witness who watched Isabella refuse to leave Marco's apartment for a week while demanding compensation for imaginary services. I'm also the guy who's been documenting all your harassment attempts. Smile for the camera, by the way. Jesse held up his phone, which had been recording. Both girls went pale. You can't record us without permission? Chloe stammered. Actually, I can. Thanks for the evidence. But they weren't done. Next came the social media blitz. But this time it was coordinated. All three of them started posting about my abuse, my manipulation, my theft of Isabella's belongings. The problem was, they were all telling slightly different versions of the story. Isabella claimed I'd stolen money from her. Brittany said I'd destroyed her property. Chloe insisted I'd cheated on her with multiple women. The stalking got more aggressive. They'd sit in Brittany's car outside my building, following me to work, to the store, to the gym. One morning, I found them camping in the parking garage at 6 a.m., waiting for me to leave for work. This is insane, Jesse said, peering through the blinds at them. They're literally stalking you now. That's when Isabella crossed the final line. She started showing up at my office building, not just calling, but actually coming inside and demanding to see me. Building security had to escort her out 3 times. The security footage from the office building was pure gold. Isabella screaming at the front desk, demanding they call me down, threatening to expose me to my coworkers. The security guard, this massive dude named Marcus, finally had to physically escort her out while she shrieked about her rights. The final straw came when she somehow got into my apartment building, probably tailgated behind another resident, and left a bag of my stuff outside my door. Except half of it wasn't even mine. It was random junk mixed with a few of my actual belongings, like she was playing some twisted game. The note attached said, I'm being generous. The rest stays with me until you pay me what you owe me. Jessie picked up the bag and examined the contents. She gave you back a single sock, your high school yearbook, and, is this a stapler? Whose stapler is this? I have no idea. This girl's lost her damn mind. Wait, Jessie said, digging deeper into the bag. There's more. A broken phone charger that doesn't fit any phone made in the last 5 years, a keychain from some tourist trap, and, dude, is this a pregnancy test? What the hell? I looked at the test. It was unused, still in the package. Why would she put that in there? She's trying to mess with your head. That night, Jessie sat me down with a drink and laid it out straight. Dude, you need to stop being nice about this and go legal. And I did. Monday morning, I called my lawyer, David, and laid out everything. The theft, the harassment, the stalking, the threats. I had screenshots of every text, photos of them following me, security footage from my office building. David listened to the whole story and just whistled. Marco, this isn't just a bad breakup anymore. This is a criminal matter. We're talking about a restraining order, theft charges, harassment charges. How much was the stuff she took worth? I documented everything. The watches alone were worth $3,000. My mom's jewelry was irreplaceable but insured for $5,000. Total damages were around $12,000. File everything, I told him. Restraining order, theft charges, civil suit. I'm done being reasonable. David grinned. Now you're talking. Let's bury her in paperwork. Getting the restraining order was easier than I expected. The judge looked at the evidence, photos of them following me, texts threatening to destroy my reputation, security footage of Isabella trying to force her way into my office, and granted it immediately. Mr. O'Brien, the judge said, this behavior is completely unacceptable. Ms. Rossi and her associates are to have no contact with you whatsoever. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. The look on Isabella's face when she was served with the restraining order was priceless. According to the process server, she broke down crying and claimed she was the real victim here. But I wasn't done. While the criminal charges were being processed, I did some digging into Isabella's employment situation. Turns out her wellness startup had a pretty strict social media policy and code of conduct. I spent an evening putting together a comprehensive package. Screenshots of her harassment posts, documentation of her stalking behavior, photos of her and her friends confronting me at public places. All of it showed a clear pattern of unprofessional, harassing behavior. Then I created an anonymous email account and sent it all to her company's HR department with a simple message. You may want to be aware of how one of your employees is representing your company in public. The consequences came fast and hard. Fast. And Isabella's company fired her within 48 hours of receiving that email. Turns out they'd been getting complaints from clients who'd seen her social media meltdowns and connected her to the company. The harassment evidence was just the final straw. Jesse got the update from Brittany's boyfriend, who was apparently getting tired of the drama. Isabella got canned from her job. She's claiming it's wrongful termination, but they documented everything. Social media conduct violations, harassment, bringing negative attention to the company. She's toast. The theft charges stuck too. My mom's jewelry box was found in Isabella's new apartment during the search warrant execution. She tried to claim I'd given it to her as a gift, but there were photos of it in my apartment from months before we'd even started fighting. The civil suit was where things got really interesting. Isabella tried to countersue for emotional distress, but her case was laughable. That's when David dropped the bombshell on me. Marco, I got a call yesterday from someone unexpected. Mr. Rossi reached out privately. I thought I'd misheard him. Isabella's father? The very same. Apparently, he's been doing some soul searching since that dinner. He wants to help settle this quietly and get your property back. Says he's concerned about preserving the family's reputation. I couldn't believe it. Isabella's own father was switching sides. David laid out the meeting. Mr. Rossi had seen the evidence package. The theft documentation, the harassment screenshots, the stalking photos. He was horrified by what his daughter had become and wanted to make it right before it became a public spectacle. He's offering to pay the full settlement amount plus your legal fees, David explained, in exchange for keeping this out of the media and avoiding a jury trial. He also wants to personally return your mother's jewelry box. The meeting was set for the following day. Mr. Rossi showed up looking like he'd aged 10 years since that dinner. He was quiet, respectful, and deeply embarrassed. Marco, he said, placing my mom's jewelry box carefully on David's desk, I owe you an apology. What happened at our dinner, what Isabella did afterward, this is not how we raised her. He handed David a cashier's check for the full amount. I hope this covers the damages and your legal expenses. I also hope you can forgive a foolish old man who didn't see his daughter clearly until it was too late. The real shock came during the actual court hearing. Isabella had no idea her father had contacted us. She walked into that courtroom expecting his support, probably thinking Daddy would bail her out like he always had. Instead, she found her own father sitting in the gallery, on my side of the courtroom. The look on her face when she saw him was pure devastation. Her mouth fell open, and she actually stumbled. Her cut-rate lawyer had to steady her. Your Honor, David said during his opening, the defendant's own family recognizes the severity of her actions. Mr. Rossi has cooperated fully with the recovery of stolen property and has taken responsibility for his daughter's behavior. Isabella turned to stare at her father with this expression of complete betrayal. Mr. Rossi couldn't even look at her. He just sat there, staring at his hands, while his daughter realized that even her own family thought her behavior was indefensible. She ended up settling for the full amount within an hour. Her lawyer basically threw in the towel once he realized she had zero family support and the evidence was overwhelming. But watching Isabella realize that her own father had sided with me, that was better than any monetary settlement. That was the moment she understood she'd burned every bridge, lost every ally, and destroyed every relationship that mattered. Her dad left without speaking to her. I heard from Jesse later that she spent 20 minutes crying in the courthouse bathroom after the hearing. 6 months later, Isabella's life had completely imploded. No job, legal bills she couldn't afford, a restraining order that followed her everywhere, and a reputation in our social circle that was permanently damaged. Her friendship with Brittany and Chloe had collapsed when they realized they could face charges as accessories to harassment. Turns out fair-weather friends disappear quickly when consequences get real. She'd moved back in with her parents,
who were reportedly furious about the legal bills and the embarrassment. Her relationship with her father was permanently damaged. Jesse heard through the grapevine that they barely spoke anymore. I got all my stuff back, including my mom's jewelry box. The watches were damaged. Isabella had apparently worn them and scratched them up, but that just added to the settlement amount. The best part? I ran into her at the grocery store a few months later. She saw me, turned white as a sheet, and immediately went down a different aisle. The restraining order was still in effect, so she legally couldn't even approach me. Jessie was with me and whispered, "Is that her? Damn, she looks rough. Karma's a hell of a thing." She really did look rough. Tired, stressed, probably working multiple retail jobs to pay off her legal bills. Part of me almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered her laughing while calling me a trained seal in Italian, and the sympathy evaporated. I'm dating someone new now, a veterinarian who actually asks about my family and listens when I talk. We went to dinner with her parents last month, still taking things slow. Isabella wanted to play games with my dignity. Well, she played herself. Story 6. This story is titled, "My parents sold my gaming PC behind my back for sister shopping spree, so I moved out and never looked back." Hi everyone! Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey everyone, I don't usually post stuff like this, but I need to vent because I'm still fuming over what went down a few months ago. A bit about me first. I'm 22, and I've been into gaming and PC building for as long as I can remember. It's not just a hobby, it's been my passion since I was a kid. I've spent years saving up from part-time jobs, freelance gigs, and every birthday or holiday gift I could stretch to build what I called my dream rig, a custom $3,600 gaming PC. It wasn't just about gaming either. I used it for freelance graphic design, which helped me earn extra cash and learn some skills for the future. Now, let me introduce you to my family. My parents are the classic we know what's best types, but their definition of best usually revolves around my younger sister, Tiffany. Tiffany is 18 and has always been the golden child. If you've ever met someone who thinks the world revolves around them, that's her. She's all about designer clothes, expensive shoes, and anything trendy. And my parents? They bend over backward to make sure she has everything she wants, even if it means stepping on me to do it. So, I grew up in a house where it was always clear Tiffany came first. If money was tight, it meant I had to give something up. My mom would say things like, "You're older, you can handle disappointment better," or, "You're a boy, you don't need as much." I got used to it and figured, whatever, I'll just work hard for what I want. I didn't resent Tiffany. I just focused on my own goals and stayed out of their way. Fast forward to a few months ago. It was a regular Saturday. I'd been out with my friend Ethan. He's my best buddy and the guy I game with the most. We were talking about the next big gaming tournament we wanted to join and even brainstorming strategies for how we'd dominate. I got home that afternoon, ready to hop on my PC and start practicing. But when I walked into my room, there was the surprise. My desk was empty. My PC, my monitor, my peripherals, everything was gone. For a second, I thought I'd been robbed, but nothing else in the house seemed out of place. I ran downstairs to find my parents sitting in the living room, casually chatting over coffee like it was just another day. "Hey, where's my computer?" I asked, trying not to freak out. Mom glanced at me, not even remotely bothered. "Oh, we sold it." I stared at her, trying to process what I'd just heard. "You what?" "Sold it." "What do you mean you sold it?" Dad sighed like I was being dramatic. "Your sister needed new clothes for an event. We didn't have the money, so we sold the computer. It was just sitting there." "Just sitting there?" My voice got louder. "That computer wasn't just sitting there. I worked for years to build it. I use it for my freelance work." "Don't take that tone with us," Mom snapped. "We're your parents, and we did what was best for the family. Tiffany has an important event, and you can always save up for another computer." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Save up for another one? Do you even understand how much time and effort went into building that PC? And what about my work? How am I supposed to meet deadlines now? And WTF is that event for Tiffany that's more important than my computer? Dad, in full dad mode, waved me off. "Freelance work isn't a real job anyway. You spend more time playing games than working." They always said that, and I didn't care. Gaming was part of my life, sure, but that PC wasn't just for fun. It was how I earned money and built something entirely my own. The fact that they couldn't see that, or didn't care, was like a slap in the face. I stormed back to my room, but I couldn't calm down. I texted Ethan to tell him what happened. He was just as shocked. "Dude, that's insane. They didn't even ask you first?" "Nope, just sold it for Tiffany's stupid event," I replied. "She's so spoiled, man. You should have hidden the PC or something." Hindsight, right? But at that moment, all I could think about was how years of effort were wiped out in an instant, and no one in my family seemed to care. That night, I decided to confront Tiffany. I walked into her room, and there she was, spinning around in front of her mirror in one of her new dresses. "Do you even know what Mom and Dad did to buy you all this stuff?" I asked, leaning against her doorframe. She barely glanced at me. "What are you talking about?" "They sold my computer, my $3,600 gaming rig, gone just so you could have your designer haul." She shrugged, still admiring herself. "So? It's just a computer. You can always build another one." I couldn't believe her indifference. That wasn't just a computer, Tiffany. It was years of saving, working, and building. It was my livelihood. "Not my problem," she said with a smug grin. "It's not like I told them to sell it." She paused for a second, her tone turning defensive. "Besides, it's not my fault they thought it was a good idea. They're the ones who actually sold it, not me." Her words made my blood boil. "You mentioned it, didn't you? You knew exactly what they'd do, and you let it happen." Tiffany rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. "Oh, please. Don't act like I control what Mom and Dad do. If they sold your precious little computer, it's because they thought it was the best choice. That's on them, not me." I stood there staring at her. I couldn't believe how heartless she was. She paused for a second and added, "Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your little games, you'd understand what's actually important. I have an image to maintain. You're just sitting in your room playing video games all day." I walked out before I said something I'd regret. Talking to Tiffany was pointless. She didn't see the problem because she'd never had to work for anything in her life. Everything she wanted was handed to her on a silver platter, and my parents were happy to keep it that way. Over the next few days, things at home were tense. My parents acted like nothing happened, while Tiffany paraded around in her new clothes. Every time I thought about how casually they decided to sell something so important to me, my frustration grew. Ethan kept checking in, trying to keep me grounded. "You gotta do something, man. Don't let them get away with this." And yeah, here where I am right now. I think Ethan is right. I couldn't just sit back and let them treat me like a doormat, but I also keep thinking of sucking it up and ignore it. I truly don't know anymore. Do you guys think I'm overreacting? If my parents thought they could walk all over me, they were about to learn otherwise. The days that followed were rough. I could barely look at Dad and Mom without feeling like my blood was boiling. Every time Tiffany waltzed past me, flaunting her designer haul, it was like she was rubbing it in my face. I tried to avoid them as much as possible, holding up in my room with my old beat-up laptop. I used it to get by with freelance work, but that shit was so slow, like using a toaster to bake a cake. It was a far cry from my custom-built PC, and every time I struggled to meet a deadline or fix a crash, my frustration grew. Ethan was a lifeline during all this. He kept me sane when I felt like I was drowning in frustration. He'd call me up at random times just to check in, or talk about something completely unrelated, like the latest game updates or a funny meme he'd seen. One night, as I was venting to him again about how ridiculous my family was being, he said, "You know what? It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business. Except in your case, they made it personal, and now they're treating it like business. It was personal. This wasn't just some financial transaction. This was my family showing me exactly where I stood in their priorities." At that moment, I realized I had to do something, not just to get my computer back, but to make them see they couldn't keep treating me like an afterthought. So, I gathered every piece of proof I could find that the PC was mine. Receipts from the components I'd bought, photos of the build process, and even screenshots of my freelance earnings to show how important it was for my work. I also reached out to the person who had bought the PC. They were sympathetic but firm. No refunds unless I paid them back the $1,200 my parents had sold it for. And here I am right now. I'm actually thinking about letting it go. It seems like too much trouble. And honestly, the thought of confronting my parents again makes me want to smash my head against a wall. Do you guys think I'm overreacting? Should I just suck it up and move on? Update 1. Hey folks, I didn't think things could get messier, but somehow they have. As I told you before, I was torn between choosing to stay silent or confronting my family. But then Ethan reminded me, if you don't stand up for yourself now, they'll just keep doing it. They'll think they can take whatever they want from you whenever it's convenient for them. He was right. This wasn't just about the PC anymore. It was about respect. So I confronted them at dinner. I figured it was the best time to get them all in one place. I sat down at the table, staring at my parents while Tiffany scrolled through her phone, completely oblivious. Mom was mid-sentence about some neighborhood gossip when I cut her off. "I want my money back," I said, placing a folder of documents on the table. Dad raised an eyebrow. "What money?" "The $1,200 you got from selling my PC," I said firmly. "I built that computer with my own money.
Legally, it belongs to me. You had no right to sell it. Mom let out an exaggerated sigh, like I was a toddler throwing a tantrum. We've already been over this. Your sister needed help, and we made a decision as a family. No, you made a decision for the family without asking me, I shot back. That's theft, plain and simple. Dad leaned back in his chair, his face darkening. Watch your tone, boy. We're your parents. Everything in this house belongs to us. You live under our roof, so technically, that computer was ours. That's not how it works, I said, keeping my voice steady even though I wanted to scream. I pulled out a receipt and held it up. This says I paid for the parts with my own money. This is proof that it was mine. And this, I handed them the buyer's copy of the transaction, proves you sold it for $1,200. You owe me. Mom gasped like I just told her I was disowning them. How dare you accuse us of stealing? We did this for Tiffany. She's your sister. Family is about sacrifice. Yeah, it seems like I'm the only one making sacrifices, I snapped. Tiffany gets everything handed to her, and I'm expected to just roll with it? Not anymore. Either you pay me back, or I'll take legal action. You wouldn't dare, Mom hissed. Try me, I said, locking eyes with her. Tiffany, who had been silent up until now, finally chimed in. Oh my God, are you seriously threatening Mom and Dad over a computer? You're pathetic. No, I said, glaring at her. What's pathetic is that you're perfectly fine with taking advantage of someone else's hard work without a second thought. You knew what they did, and you didn't care. She rolled her eyes. It's not my fault they decided to sell it. I didn't make them do anything. I shot back. You mentioned it to them. You knew exactly what you were doing, Tiffany. She gave me an attitude. I only mentioned your computer, because you're always complaining about how busy you are with work. I thought you'd appreciate the break. Her voice was calm, like she was the victim here. Appreciate the break? I said, my voice rising. Do you even hear yourself? That computer was my livelihood. Tiffany smirked, unfazed. Wow, you're twisting this into my fault? You're the one who's always talking about how you're independent. I figured you wouldn't mind helping out the family for once. Isn't that what being independent is all about? My fists clenched under the table. Helping out? You didn't need a designer haul, Tiffany. You just wanted it. There's a difference, she scoffed. Maybe you're just mad because I know how to get what I want, and you're too busy sulking to figure it out. Don't blame me for being better at this than you. I swear I almost slapped her. But my dad slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. Enough! We'll pay you back, but don't expect anything else from us. You're on your own from now on. I laughed bitterly. I've been on my own for years. The difference now is I'm done letting you take advantage of me. The next day, they handed me $1,200 in cash, their faces tight with anger. I took the money without a word. It wasn't a victory, but it was a step forward. I contacted the buyer again, and they agreed to sell the PC back to me for the same price. Picking it up felt like getting a piece of my identity back, but as much as I loved having my rig again, I now know things won't go back to the way they were. My parents and Tiffany aren't going to change, and I can't keep living under a roof where I was treated like a second-class citizen. It's time to figure out my next move. I honestly thinking of moving out. Is it a good idea, or am I putting myself in more trouble? Update 2. Hey again. So after my last update, I started brainstorming ways to get out. I knew moving out wasn't going to be easy. I didn't have a huge savings cushion, and rent wasn't cheap. But I had my freelance work, and I was determined to make it work. I called Ethan. He had been my sounding board through this whole mess, and I knew he'd have ideas. Dude, you need to get out of there, Ethan said as soon as I told him my plan. You can crash at my place for a bit if you need to. Thanks, man. But I think I need my own space. I've been living under their thumb for too long. I just need to figure out how to swing it financially. Ethan was silent for a moment, then said, What if you doubled down on your freelance stuff? You're good at it, and there's definitely demand out there. You could even start streaming again. He wasn't wrong. I dabbled in streaming before, but life had gotten in the way. Now, with my PC back and a fire lit under me, it seemed like the perfect time to give it another shot. That night, I started researching apartments. My budget was tight, so I focused on small studios or shared housing. After a few hours of scrolling through listings, I found a tiny place a few miles away. It wasn't much, a single room with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but it was within my price range and close enough to town that I wouldn't feel isolated. I reached out to the landlord, who agreed to meet me the next day for a tour. When I walked into the apartment, it hit me how real this was becoming. The place was bare bones, but I wanted it. I signed the lease that same day and felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The next challenge was packing up my life without tipping off my family. I wasn't planning on making a dramatic exit, but I also didn't want to give them a chance to guilt trip me into staying. Over the next week, I slowly started moving my stuff out. I'd take a box or two at a time and stash it at Ethan's place until I was ready to make the final move. Meanwhile, I dove headfirst into freelancing and streaming. I updated my portfolio, reached out to past clients, and even started advertising my services on forums and social media. The response was better than I expected, and within days, I had enough work lined up to cover my first month's rent. As my move-out day approached, I started avoiding my family as much as possible. Tiffany didn't seem to notice. She was too busy flaunting her latest designer bag on social media. My dad and mom, on the other hand, seemed to sense something was up. They started dropping little comments at dinner like, "You've been awfully quiet lately," or "You should let us know if you're planning anything big." I brushed them off with vague answers, but I could feel their eyes on me. The final straw came 2 nights before my move. I was in my room, packing up the last of my gear, when my mom knocked on my door. "Can we talk?" she asked, stepping inside before I could even answer. "I don't really have anything to say to you," I muttered, shuffling papers on my desk. "Just hear me out," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed like everything was normal. "You have to understand. We didn't sell your computer to hurt you. Tiffany mentioned it when we were trying to figure out how to help her. She said you didn't use it that much anymore, and that it was worth a lot of money. We thought, maybe it was a good idea." I turned to face her, my jaw tightening. "So you're saying this was Tiffany's idea?" She sighed, looking almost guilty. "Not exactly. But she suggested it, and we thought she made a valid point. You've always been so independent. We thought you'd understand." Her words made my stomach churn. Tiffany had planted the seed, and my parents had just run with it. "You thought I'd understand?" I said, my voice sharp. "Understand that you sold something I worked years for because Tiffany wanted a new wardrobe?" Mom flinched but didn't respond. Instead, she stood up and left, as if her half-hearted explanation was supposed to make it all better. That's the kind of person Tiffany was. She twists things to get what she wants. She'd act innocent, drop a hint here and there, and suddenly her ideas became my parents' plans. The morning of my move came faster than I expected. I loaded up the last of my boxes and left a note on the kitchen counter. It wasn't dramatic, just a few lines explaining that I needed space and time to focus on myself. I didn't want a confrontation, and I knew if I tried to explain in person, they'd just try to guilt me into staying. Ethan met me at the apartment to help me unload. As we set up my PC in the corner of the room, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. That night, I went live on my streaming channel for the first time in months. The viewer count was small, but it didn't matter. I was in my own space, doing something I loved. This is how things unfolded lately. I have a bit weird feeling, but I'm trying to pass through it. Anyway, if anything pops out, I'll post an update. Final update. Hey everyone, here's an update on how things have been since I moved out. I thought leaving would be the end of the drama, but boy, was I wrong. After one day of moving out, I had freelance gigs to tackle and a stream schedule to figure out. But there was a nagging thought I couldn't shake. Would my parents even care that I'd left? Or would they just write it off as me being dramatic? I didn't want validation from them. I'd long given up on that. But part of me still wanted to know if they'd even noticed I was gone. By mid-afternoon, I got my answer. Mom called me. When I didn't pick up, she left a voicemail. "You could have at least told us you were leaving," she said. "Your father and I are very disappointed in how you handled this. Family is about sticking together, not running away." I deleted the voicemail without finishing it. A few minutes later, Dad tried calling, but I ignored him too. Then came the text barrage. Mom started with, "You've really hurt your mother." That was followed by, "We've always done what we thought was best for you." Then Dad chimed in with a classic, "You're being reckless." I put my phone on silent and went back to work. I wasn't about to let their guilt-tripping derail my day. But that evening, as I was setting up my stream, a new message popped up, this time from Tiffany. "You left? Lol. Guess you couldn't handle it. Anyway, Mom's freaking out, so you might want to call her before she has a meltdown." It was such a textbook Tiffany response that I didn't even bother replying. Instead, I focused on my stream. I was starting to get a small but supportive group of regular viewers, and the sense of community they brought was something I hadn't realized I needed. People who actually appreciated my skills, who showed up just to hang out and watch me do what I loved. It was refreshing. The next few weeks were a mix of progress and lingering frustrations. On one hand, my freelance gigs were picking up, and my streaming audience was slowly growing. On the other hand, my parents wouldn't stop trying to reel me back in. The texts kept coming, alternating between guilt trips and outright anger. "You're turning your back on your family," Mom wrote one day. "Tiffany's upset too. Don't you care about how your actions affect us?" Tiffany upset? That was rich. She'd barely acknowledged me when I lived there, unless she needed something, and now I was supposed to believe she cared. I ignored the texts, but they left a bitter taste in my mouth. One evening, Ethan came over to hang out and he brought it up. So, have your parents calmed down yet? I said. Nope. They're still texting me like I owe them an explanation. Classic guilt play. You think they'll ever let it go? Probably not, I admitted. But I'm not going back. I can't. Living there. It wasn't healthy. They don't respect me, and they never will. Ethan gave me a knowing look. Yeah, but have you told them that? I paused, realizing he had a point. I'd been ignoring them, but I hadn't actually confronted the root of the problem. Part of me didn't want to because I knew it wouldn't change anything, but maybe for my own peace of mind, I needed to say my piece. The next day, I sat down with my phone and started typing. It took me a while to find the right words, but eventually I sent a message to my parents. It went like this. I've made my decision, and I'm not coming back. This isn't about being selfish. It's about doing what's best for me. I've spent years feeling like my needs didn't matter, and I can't keep living like that. I hope you'll respect my choice, but if not, I'll still be moving forward without you. I hit send and immediately felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't expecting a positive response, and I didn't get one. Mom replied with a long, rambling message about how I was being ungrateful and how Tiffany's happiness had always been their priority because she needed more support. Dad followed up with a blunt, "You'll regret this someday." But instead of feeling hurt or angry, I felt free. At least, I didn't feel the need to argue or explain myself further. Their words didn't hold the same power they used to. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my work and streaming. One day, while scrolling through social media, I came across a post from Tiffany. It was a selfie of her holding a designer purse with the caption, "So grateful for my amazing parents who always prioritize what matters." I rolled my eyes and kept scrolling. I didn't need to engage. Let her have her little fantasy world. It wasn't my problem anymore. A few days later, a family friend ran into me at a coffee shop. "I heard you moved out," they said, raising an eyebrow. "Your parents are having a tough time, you know. They've been asking everyone for help." I frowned. "Help? What do you mean?" "They've overextended themselves, buying things for Tiffany. I think they thought you'd still be there to pitch in." I shrugged, taking a sip of my coffee. "That's unfortunate." And I meant it. It was unfortunate. For them. For me? I'm doing great without them. After that conversation with the family friend, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of validation. My parents' finances falling apart wasn't something I took joy in. It just confirmed what I'd known for a long time. They'd prioritized Tiffany's wants over the family's stability for years, and now they were dealing with the consequences. Meanwhile, I was finally learning what it meant to be independent, and I wasn't about to let their choices drag me back into their chaos. That didn't stop the guilt trip texts from coming, though. Mom's messages became more desperate. "We're struggling here, and you've left us to deal with everything on our own." Then there was Dad's favorite line. "If you were a good son, you'd help your family in their time of need." A good son? That was rich coming from someone who couldn't even acknowledge my hard work, let alone respect it. Tiffany stayed silent, though. She didn't reach out, and honestly, I didn't expect her to. She probably figured she'd let our parents do the heavy lifting and wait for me to cave. One day, Ethan came over again. He had a grin like he had something big to tell me. "Guess who I ran into at the store today?" he said as we sat down. "Who?" I asked, already knowing it was probably someone connected to my family. "Your mom," Ethan said, chuckling. "She cornered me by the frozen pizzas and went on this whole rant about how you've abandoned them. She even said you're being influenced by bad company, which I'm assuming is me." I rolled my eyes. "Of course she did. What did you say?" "I told her you're doing great, and maybe if they respected you more, you wouldn't have had to leave," Ethan said, smirking. She didn't take it well. I laughed, but inside it stung a little. Not because of what Mom said. At this point, I was used to her dramatics, but because it was another reminder of how little they understood me. They weren't upset because they missed me. They were upset because they'd lost control. A few days later, Mom sent another text. This one different from the others. "Your sister's birthday is coming up. We'd like you to come home for dinner." It would mean a lot to her. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe this was their way of extending an olive branch, but I knew better. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was about appearances. They wanted to play happy family for a night, and I was supposed to pretend everything was fine. I showed Ethan the text, and he shook his head. "Don't do it, man. They're just going to pull you back into their drama." "I know," I said, sighing. "But if I don't go, it's just going to give them more ammo to say I'm the bad guy." "Who cares what they say?" Ethan shot back. "You're not living your life for them anymore. You don't owe them anything." He was right, of course. Deep down, I knew that. But saying no to my family, even after everything, was harder than I wanted to admit. So I did something I hadn't done since I moved out. I called Mom. When she picked up, her voice was dripping with fake warmth. "Oh, honey, it's so good to hear from you."
Hey, Mom, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I got your text about Tiffany's birthday. Yes, we're having a nice dinner, just the family, she said quickly. Tiffany would love for you to be there. I don't think I can make it, I said firmly. I'm really busy with work right now, and honestly, I don't think it would be a good idea. There was a long pause before she responded. You're really going to let your sister down like this? After everything we've done for you? And there it was, the guilt card, right on schedule. Mom, this isn't about Tiffany. It's about the fact that every time I try to have a relationship with you guys, it feels like I'm the only one putting in any effort. I'm not coming to dinner because I'm done pretending everything's fine when it's not. She didn't take it well, to say the least. Fine, she said. If you want to throw your family away, that's your choice. But don't come crying to us when you realize what you've lost. That was the last straw. Mom, I've spent my entire life trying to earn your approval, and it's never been enough. So no, I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just finally putting myself first. Goodbye. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. It felt like cutting a rope that had been holding me back for years. I wasn't sure what would come next, but I knew I couldn't keep living in their shadow. After that call, I blocked Mom and Dad's numbers. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew it was necessary. The constant texts and calls weren't helping anyone, and I needed space to focus on my own life. Tiffany didn't even bother reaching out, which honestly made things easier. With the family drama out of the picture, I was able to throw myself fully into my work and stream. One night, while I was streaming, someone in the chat asked, "What made you start streaming?" For a moment, I hesitated. I hadn't talked about my family situation publicly. It felt too personal, but then I realized it didn't matter. I started streaming because it's something I'm passionate about, I said, but also because I wanted to prove to myself that I could build something on my own, without anyone holding me back. The chat lit up with messages like, "Respect," and "You're an inspiration, dude." It felt good to know people appreciated what I was doing, not just for the gameplay, but for the story behind it. As the weeks turned into months, I noticed that I wasn't angry anymore. I still didn't want a relationship with my parents or Tiffany, but I didn't feel the need to dwell on it. Cutting ties had given me the peace I needed to move forward, and for the first time, I felt truly free. One day, Ethan and I were hanging out, and he asked, "So, do you think they'll ever apologize?" I shrugged. Probably not, but honestly, I don't need them to. I'm finally living my life on my own terms, and that's enough for me. And it was. Now I'm building a life where my hard work is valued and my passions are celebrated, not dismissed. To anyone reading this and dealing with something similar, you don't have to stay where you're not respected. You deserve better. And walking away isn't giving up, it's choosing yourself. Thank you guys for all your support and comments. It really meant a lot to me.